despised every minute of it.
Well, how did Al Gore go about changing it? And don't you have to give some of the credit to Bill Clinton for allowing some of that power to go to the role?
That's absolutely right. Walter Mondale really started to build the notion of a substantive vice president. Bill Clinton decided he would abandon really political considerations in picking Al Gore and pick someone he could work with in the administration. And Al Gore was influential in foreign policy, in science and technology policy, and of course ran the Reinventing Government program.
You don't think that this is just a case of Al Gore being the right man to expand the role? You think that the role now will forever change? In other words, he's raised the worship services this morning, and they will now proceed that one block by limousine, not walking, and they'll go to the White House where they'll meet with the Clintons, the Gores, congressional leaders. It's said to be an informal coffee, and Katie was mentioning before it might be fun to be a fly on the wall for that informal coffee.
There we see President and Mrs. Clinton, and of course Al Gore and his wife Tipper doing a photo op before they welcome the new future First Family to 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue for, as Matt mentioned, an informal coffee, which I'm sure is quite a sentimental and wistful time for President Clinton and his wife, although I think they're looking at the future with two very different perspectives. Obviously, Hillary Clinton is now a senator from New York, and Bill Clinton will be working apparently quite closely with the Presidential Library in Arkansas, giving speeches and I guess keeping himself busy in a variety of ways.
Giving speeches, and according to the estimates and the kind of people who are experts on this sort of thing, could raise about $100,000 a pop.
That's
for
right.
Those speeches. And one of the newspaper articles this morning said that already he's getting about 100 offers per week.
Wow.
So, I mean, you know, there's obviously a limited amount of time in a week, but you can kind of do the math. Someone kind of estimated that he might make about $10.5 million next year, which is a pretty good pay bump from being president of the United States.
That's for sure. And there was a recent article in the Washington Post about how much Colin Powell had earned making speeches, I think, in the last 6 years, and it was something like $27 million.
Yeah. But the Clintons have some bills. They have to pay off the legal bills. They've got 2 new houses. They have one in Chappaqua. They have one here in Washington, D.C. on Embassy Row. And one of the newspaper articles said that the president is looking for some office space, possibly
on Park Avenue
in Manhattan. And the Gores...
He was apparently looking at Rockefeller Center for an office, but now I hear that he's seriously considering 500 Park Avenue and maybe buying an apartment and a workspace area.
Right, exactly. Which is, I think, 500 Park is somewhere near 57th Street. Anyway, it's good that he didn't come to Rockefeller Center because he would have been out there every morning, you know, holding a sign.
Hi, Katie. Hi, Matt. He would have wanted us to come out and talk to him. And, of course, he would have been badgering Al.
It's my birthday today, things like that.
Hey, what about me?
And the Gores are what? The Gores have a house in Arlington, Virginia. It's Mrs. Gore's family's house, right?
Her childhood home in North Arlington. That's right.
So they're off heading in separate directions.
But I'm not sure. I guess I haven't heard much speculation recently about what Vice President Al Gore may be doing once he leaves office. I think there was a little bit of speculation he might be president of Harvard, but I don't think that there's much truth to that.
Anyway, I think what happens is after the inaugural ceremonies, the Clintons go to, is it Andrews Air Force Base?
That's right.
They have a ceremony there indoors. It's been moved indoors where he reviews the troops one last time. There's a 21-gun salute. Luckily, that's outdoors. And then he heads to the plane, which is not Air Force One. It's a 737, I believe, and he flies up to New York.
That's right, to Chappaqua, right? Is that where he's
going?
To
Westchester. Is he going into Westchester?
Westchester Airport and then heading to Chappaqua. Anyway.
And a new life.
Yeah. Sort of interesting, isn't it?
No question about it. But again, it's the orderly transition of power that we don't mention enough and we take for granted in this country because it doesn't happen in every country around the world.
True. Anyway, we'll be back with much more inaugural coverage after these messages.
Legacy with Washington Post reporter and Clinton biographer David Marinis. That's coming up in our final half hour this morning.
Wow, look at all those camera crews gathered on the steps of the White House. But first, let's go back over to the Pentagon, where Al is standing by with a check of the weather.
All right, thanks a lot.
Comes the 43rd president of the United States, and I had resisted the urge to say during that 1949 inaugural, Tom Brokaw covered it with the NBC News team, but he does join us now. Tom, good morning to you.
Actually, I was living in such a remote part of the country, we didn't have television in 1949. The first one that I remember, of course, when I was 20 years old, was John F. Kennedy, and that electrifying speech that he made that really legitimized his own presidency at that time. He'd won by only 118,000 votes, but it electrified the country and gave a sense of the possibility. I think for George W. Bush, he has a similar challenge, and it probably won't come in his words today because he recognizes that he's not a great orator, but in his actions in the first few days in office. Although it's interesting to speculate on what they are talking about at the White House right now. The governor told me when I saw him last week in Texas at the ranch that he has talked to Clinton about how he gives speeches, how he prepares them, how long they should be. He's trying to learn how to communicate, among other things, from Bill Clinton.
Well, yeah. Bill Clinton really isn't known for being succinct, so he might not want to follow his lead in every department. Meanwhile, there's something nice and constant and reassuring, albeit emotional, about the images we're greeted with on January 20th. During these times. I mean, do you remember covering these events, Tom, what you were most struck by? I always think of Richard Nixon leaving. Obviously, that was during a different time.
That was August.
Yes, exactly.
And he was not leaving under circumstances that the Constitution dictated. He had to resign. I was actually standing on the south portico of the White House and watched him give that famous Nixon salute, that defiant moment when he got onto the helicopter. I think the most dramatic one that I have been witness to was probably Jimmy Carter and Ronald Reagan. No one quite knew what to expect of Ronald Reagan, the governor out of California. A lot of people thought that he was a political lightweight of some kind. We had hostages in Iran at that time. Carter was on the phone until the final moments of his own presidency, trying to get them released on his watch. President Reagan, with his great sense of theater, came out of the luncheon at the Capitol and said the hostages have been released. They're in airspace, and it was a fresh beginning for this country. And he gave the country a sense of the possibility again. We'd been through difficult times, 20% interest rates, energy crisis, and so on.
You have to think about it, the Capitol Day when George Bush, former President George Bush, is sitting there watching his son take the oath of office. He's looking at Bill Clinton across the way as the man who removed him from the White House. And in some ways, this is political payback that you have to know is going to be on the Bush family's mind.
It's political and family payback. The Bush family is very loyal one to another, although it was tested on election night when Jeb Bush couldn't quite deliver for it in the manner in which they had hoped that he would. That's Mitch McConnell coming out, who is a senator from Kentucky with his wife, Wayne Chow, who will be the new labor secretary. He's going to be in charge of the proceedings at the Capitol today.
He was the man who had to decide whether they stayed inside or out?
Right. And he's also a great foe of John McCain, which will be something we'll want to watch this first week. And now we do see the president-elect coming. Well, he's got his back turned. Trent Lott is emerging. George W. Bush has got his back turned there as he comes out of the White House. You can see Bill Clinton's very familiar profile now in the background. You know, Republicans, as much as they despised Bill Clinton and what he stood for, had this begrudging admiration for his political skills. I mean, Newt Gingrich will say there was never a better tactician that came to this town. And he picked Newt Gingrich's pockets on several occasions, obviously. And Gingrich went out of power thinking that he was going to lead a revolution well into the 21st century.
And on a day like today, Tom, partisanship is really, at least they attempt to put it aside for a few hours so that really both parties can enjoy the moment.
Indeed, Katie, and that's very important to remember. These are people who have come to the public arena through different doors. But once they get into the arena, they have the calling of public service and the idea of doing something for their country. And while they differ, they do share a kind of gene pool about willing to risk their reputation and to come to this town and try to get things done. And when you see them all in a room, it's very hard to know which are the Republicans and which are the Democrats as they just interact with each other.
However, when you see them on the floor of the Senate and in Congress in general in the next 100 days, you'll have a pretty good idea of who the Democrats and the Republicans are.
You will, and you'll also know who the Texans are on this day as well. They've got their rain covers on their cowboy hats.
And their boots as well. Of course, President Clinton has been relishing every last second of his presidency. He's been very, very busy up to the last minute, hasn't he?
Andrew Card told me yesterday that the White House painters have been trying to get into the Oval Office since Thursday night, and they've not been able to because he was going to be there until 10 o'clock this morning.
Probably locked the door and said, no, not yet.
This is the joke where they say the SWAT team should enter the building right around now.
Right.
There's Dennis Hastert.
Dennis Hastert, who is the Speaker of the House, and what will be interesting is how George W. Bush gets the two parties on the Hill to try to work together. Told me last week that he had a conversation with Dick Gephardt, who of course is Dennis Hastert's Democratic adversary saying to Gephardt, if you want to be Speaker, don't cross me. Saying that to Gephardt. In other words, you know, your road to success here is cooperation. I saw Senator Hillary Clinton there just a few moments ago. I thought that she was giving instructions. It's also a real moment of passage for her, obviously.
I was going to say, these two are going to have such a different post-presidential perspective, aren't they? I mean, she is, of course, going to become, for the first time in her life, a political figure in her own right and not the spouse of a politician, although people have never doubted that she was had a lot of power, even if she didn't have the title.
One of the things that George W. Bush wants to be kind to Bill Clinton, even under the circumstances of the last 24 hours with the plea bargaining and so on. Bill Clinton, as you have been saying this morning, is going out of office with an approval rating in the mid-60s. George W. Bush is coming into office with expectations in the mid-40s. There's a big difference. He has the oath of office. When he takes it today, he'll know in his mind that he has 500,000 fewer votes than his opponent, Al Gore. So he does not want to be critical of Bill Clinton personally as they reach this intersection where one goes one way and one goes the other way.
Do you think he'll say something flattering about Bill Clinton during his inaugural address, just as Bill Clinton said of his father?
I wouldn't be surprised that he'll say something like that. First of all, the Bush family is known for its good manners in public, and there will probably be some acknowledgement of the outgoing president. It'll have to be very carefully written, however.
You talk about that approval in the 40% range for for President George W. Bush right now. Dee Dee Myers was saying yesterday that one of the mistakes that Bill Clinton made when he first came to the White House 8 years ago was assuming he had some kind of a mandate when, in fact, the voters had told him something quite different.
I think that's true, Matt, and I don't think that George W. Bush will pick a divisive issue like gays in the military to start. For example, he's not going to start with abortion. He is going to do something about education, but it won't be vouchers at the head of the list. He recognized in California they turned down vouchers. They also did, I think it was in Wisconsin when they had a statewide referendum on it. But he does know that education is issue 1 through 5 for most Americans. And so the first thing that we'll see is an education package with additional money and accountability for local schools, and try to do something using the bully pulpit to get more school districts to get higher test scores, more reading.
But he has big legislative obstacles looming as well, specifically that tax cut and also campaign finance reform. You mentioned John McCain, and undoubtedly these two men will be butting heads over that.
Yeah, I've been talking to the McCain people and to the senator himself. He's not wildly encouraged by the signals that he's getting. They're going to meet Wednesday at the White House with Trent Lott. Katie, I know that you saw Laura over the past couple of days. I was with the two of them down in Texas, and when I asked President-elect Bush about John McCain, he said, well, he's a friend of mine, I'm eager to work with him, but he didn't make a big commitment because Mitch McConnell, who's running these proceedings, about to get into the limousine there, is adamantly opposed to the McCain-Feingold bill. So this is going to be a very tricky passage for him.
So they may try to compromise by having sort of a version of campaign finance reform with perhaps not as many teeth, if you will, that's a little watered down?
You know, timing might be something as well. John McCain says he's going to go to the floor tomorrow. He's going to put the bar down tomorrow. But
Senator Chris Dodd of Connecticut,
Chris Dodd is going to represent the Democrats in all of this. That, I think, is something that's going to have to be negotiated because somebody asked us last night, how can George W. Bush stumble? If he gets into a public food fight with John McCain, that won't be good for him. McCain still has a very high standing in this country. He is seen as one of the most authentic politicians, and a lot of people just don't understand why they can't do something about campaign finance reform, especially during the course of an inauguration in which we have $40 million in corporate contributions paying for everything.
There's Dick Gephardt. And if there is some good news immediately on this day, the weather is somewhat cooperating. We see some umbrellas behind us here looking out over the Capitol, but at this time they were predicting terrible rain and snow and sleet, and at least it's a little better than expected, so they'll be able to do this outdoors without some of the terrible weather hassles that they had predicted.
I have what is probably a radical proposal. If Florida will reform its election system, we'll move the inauguration to Miami for January 20th.
I thought you were going to suggest a big tent over Washington, D.C.
Or maybe we could just move the inaugural date once again, at least if it's not March as it was before 1937, we could move it to May in Washington, where the weather would be much more cooperative.
Yeah, I asked Andrew Card, I've been through a number of these transitions, and I said, how many people work in the White House that stay there permanently? And he said, I frankly don't know, and he's been in the White House, but there are hundreds. And as soon as they leave there, they're going to be in there changing the drapes and doing painting and changing the carpeting in a number of the rooms. George W. Bush said at one point he would give the Oval Office a good scrubbing. I don't think that that's going to happen. That was on David Letterman, of course. But it is amazing how efficient this White House is.
And what must be nice for the White House staff, Tom and Matt, is that they know Laura Bush, many of them, and George W. Bush. They're a familiar family to them because they used to visit the Bush family when George Sr. was president. In fact, I read that Laura Bush continued to send many of the staff people Christmas cards through the years. So in a way, they won't have to get used to an entirely new family. They'll be welcoming back a familiar one.
And an interesting night because former President Bush and Barbara Bush will be spending the night in the White House this evening for the first time in a long time, not in the same bedroom they were used to. That will now be occupied by their son and daughter-in-law.
There's a wonderful story about when they first moved back to Houston. They had that smaller house, and the president woke up in the morning, George Bush Sr. did, and reached for the telephone for the White House steward, and Barbara said, no, the kitchen's down the hall.
Make your own coffee.
Yeah, exactly. By the way, this quick update, this pressing news story, Socks the cat will go to Betty Curry. It has been decided, at least on a temporary basis, and Buddy the dog will go to Chappaqua with former President, soon-to-be former President Clinton and Mrs. Clinton.
No love lost between those two presidential pets over the past several years.
Tom Daschle, who has been briefly the Senate Majority Leader, that will change today at noon as well when Dick Cheney, who is the Vice President, will be able to cast a tie-breaking vote. So the Republicans have regained control, but just barely in the Senate. They're going to share power within the committees, but Republicans will be the chair. That's Mrs. Lott there on your left with a pin on her jacket.
Tom, what happens between 11 o'clock, which we're coming up on Eastern time here, and the actual swearing-in ceremony just after noon?
Well, they have to get to the Capitol, for one thing. Then there's a holding place there, and then there's a real ritual, Matt, about getting them onto the stage. They bring on the various members of Congress and the Supreme Court. The family members will be there and the special invited guest, and then they fill that up in a stately, almost majestic fashion. And then, of course, the Vice President-elect and the President-elect come down with the outgoing president, and then we have the swearing-in ceremony. A lot of this does take place in the Capitol, and for those of you who get the chance to come to Washington, it's really worth taking one of the tours to see how many nooks and crannies there are there. Those beautiful holding rooms that are up there that have been there since, you know, the mid-19th century. And
you really do walk through that building with a sense of reverence, don't you?
You do. And the other thing is that you think seniority is worth something. Those guys who've been around for a while have some great offices.
Membership has its privileges. They must be having a good time in there.
We're still on Clinton time.
Thank you.
And we are back at 11 o'clock Eastern time on this Saturday morning. It's the 20th day of July. January, pardon me. It seems like we've been on the air for a long time. 20th day of January.
Bush's honeymoon went by in a flash.
He did pretty well in the first few months. Anyway, the year 2001, it is the day we'll swear in our 43rd president of these United States, and that ceremony, the swearing-in ceremony, takes place about an hour from now at noon at the Capitol building. Just behind us, I'm Matt Lauer, along with Katie Kirk, and Tom Brokaw has joined us as well. The coffee at the White House is concluding right now. President-elect George Bush and his wife Laura and President Clinton and Senator Hillary Clinton have all been inside.
As well as the Cheneys and the Gores and 6 members of Congress, although most of them have already left to take their place outside the Capitol where the swearing-in will take place, as you mentioned, Matt, less than an hour from now.
One of the things that we're going to have to resolve, I've known Dick Cheney since the Ford White House days.
The Cheney-Cheney issue?
The Cheney-Cheney issue, yeah. I saw Senator Simpson yesterday, and he said, you know, I was out campaigning with Cheney all fall. using the Wyoming pronunciation of it. I must say that caught me a little off guard because all the time that I've known him in Washington, it's always been Dick Cheney.
Well, I noticed that Pete Williams, who used to be Dick Cheney's spokesperson at the Pentagon, all of a sudden, who's now our Justice Department correspondent, all of a sudden started calling him Dick Cheney. So someone's gotten to Pete and said it's Cheney, not Cheney.
Well, when the Vice President-elect says that's how they pronounce my name, you have to kind of go along with that. It would be like Katie Courage or Katie Courage.
Sort of, why didn't you tell us earlier? You were at the Pentagon. We've been saying it incorrectly all these years.
It's been driving him nuts for all these years, apparently.
I would think if you were in any other high school class in Casper, Wyoming, you'd feel as if somehow you had not failed the standards of achievement. Dick Cheney and his wife Lynn were the homecoming king and queen in Casper, I think in 1959. I'm not sure. He was the captain of the football team. They both have had notable success, obviously, in Washington. She's a very outspoken scholar and conservative, a severe critic of political correctness in American life, and she expects to continue her outspoken way, she has said, during the course of this new administration.
Tom, let's talk about something that, perhaps is a little on the more delicate side of things. It concerns security, but this is one of those occasions in American history where you have basically all of the leaders of our country gathered in one place at one time, and that presents a security dilemma. But also, there is something that takes place today, and already Secretary of Defense William Cohen and his wife Janet have been whisked away from Washington to a location far away from here. And why don't you explain a little bit about why that occurs?
Well, there is a constitutional line of succession that, as everyone knows, I think that it goes from the presidency to the vice presidency to the Speaker of the House and then down through the cabinet. So even on nights of the State of the Union speech, for example, not the entire cabinet is there. They take one and put that person, man or woman, in a safe place in case there's a catastrophic event in the Capitol or a catastrophic event at the inauguration. Then we have a constitutionally mandated leader who will be able to assume the reins of power. That is only precautionary. No one is expecting anything like that.
All right, they're still in the White House, still enjoying chatting away, apparently, or maybe they just have really good sweet rolls there.
Well, Bill Clinton, which was foretold his time when he arrived for his coffee with George Bush, they were 27 minutes late. And they only got later during the course of the next 8 years.
Yes, known as Clinton time. Here they're coming out. We see Tipper Gore and right behind. Let's see. Oh, there's Lynn Cheney, sorry about that, and Tipper Gore. Particularly bittersweet moment for Tipper Gore and for Al Gore, don't you think?
Oh, more than bittersweet. They really
There's
believe that they won.
nothing sweet about it, probably.
Yeah, they won the election, they believe. And boy, it was a day for red ties for vice presidents and blue ties for the presidents. And about the same shade of suit.
We haven't heard much from Al Gore over the past few weeks, have we?
Just returned from skiing. They've been out in Snowmass, I think. Skiing, the whole family went out for that. Yeah. Look, it takes a lot of courage to run for president. You risk your personal reputation. It's an exhausting physical procedure as well, to say nothing of the emotion involved. And then to go through not just the campaign, but 35 days plus afterward, knowing in Al Gore's case that he won 500,000 votes more in the country than did the incoming president and lost in Florida in a bitterly contested election that had to be decided 5-4 by the U.S. Supreme Court. That would cause you to wake up in the middle of the night a lot of times and wondering, what if? In his case, what if I had won my home state?
There we see Mrs. Clinton, Senator Clinton. Have to get used to saying that. And soon to be First Lady Laura Bush leaving the White House. Is Senator Clinton wearing leather? Of course, a lot of attention is paid to inaugural dress, as you know.
Who's Chelsea Clinton?
You don't have to apologize, Katie.
Oh, come on, you were interested in that too, weren't you, Tom?
Absolutely.
Chelsea, a young lady who really grew up over these last 8 years right in front of all of our eyes.
Although actually away from our eyes, as I talked with Laura Bush the other day, she really is using the Clintons as a role model when it comes to protecting her twin daughters, Jenna and Barbara. And I think that the Clintons are to be applauded, as they really did shield Chelsea away from the public spotlight and the public eye.
And Chelsea Clinton has more poise for a young woman than almost anyone I know, given what she had to go through as the intermediary on a couple of occasions between her parents. Here come the blue tide guys.
Last time he walks out of the White House as president.
John Kennedy was the last president to wear a high hat.
That's right.
A stovepipe, silk hat, and morning dress.
It was sort of poignant as you heard someone say goodbye and thank you.
I understand that President Clinton spent much of the time last night writing thank you notes to his staff members, in addition to watching a movie with his family, but love to see what some of those notes said.
That's the new limousine, by the way, 2001 Cadillac model. The two motorcades. Motorcades, pardon me, have gotten to be a little excessive in Washington. There are 23 cars now for one candidate.
Why is that? Because of security concerns?
Security concerns, and they both the federal authorities and local municipalities, for example, New York, they say in New York that they do get more threats than they can allow the public to know, so they really do have to surround them. It's very roomy in the back of those presidential limousines, and they do have lots of communication devices, as you might expect. USA 1, taxation without representation was on the last one. That was the District of Columbia.
George W. Bush decided against keeping that license plate.
Mac McClarty, who was the President Clinton's good friend, said, when you leave government, you get in the back seat of a car and expect it to start. Pretty good line. Someone told me that Al Gore has not driven a car. I found this hard to believe, in more than 9 years. He has not driven a car.
I asked Mrs. Reagan when I spent some time with her recently at the Reagan Library if she was, I asked her some question about driving to the grocery store, and she looked at me like I was out of my mind. She said, I don't drive. I said, oh, I forgot. Now, if George W. Bush is anything like Bill Clinton, he'd be putting the finishing touches on his inaugural address right now, but something tells me he's not going to be doing that.
Remember those scenes of the laptop glowing in the back seat as he's on his way to the Capitol. The perpetual college sophomore doing the all-nighter, trying to get the paper done.
The presidential procrastinator. George W. Bush's speech is really going to be on the short side, about, what is it, 12 or 13 minutes they're saying now?
Well, as you see the motorcade heading to the U.S. Capitol, where the swearing-in ceremonies will occur, we are going to say that we're off the clock now. NBC doesn't want to play us overtime on a Saturday morning anymore, so Katie and I are going to say goodbye, and looks like it's time for you to take it over.
That's right. Matt has kept the seat warm for you, Mr. Brokaw.
Thank you very much. Thank you. This transition has worked out very well, may I say.
Seamless, isn't it?
It is seamless. And I know that your vast staff will be sorry to see you go, but I'm very happy to inherit them because they take very good care of you.
Well, good luck.
Have a good day.
Thanks very much.
Enjoy yourself. Thank you, Tom.
It's been a pleasure.
We'll be back right after this.
Part of the 19th century, the Addams family. I'm joined here by NBC's Washington Bureau Chief Moderator of Meet the Press, Tim Russert, who will be here for the next several hours. This, Tim, is always an important lesson, not only in civics, but in the idea of citizenship and the idea of public service.
Particularly this year, Tom, because this election was so close and so controversial. And yet today, on this Saturday morning, we see, as you called it, the peaceful transformation of power. It's quite striking.
And in that motorcade as well, for the first time that we've seen him in several weeks now, is Vice President Al Gore, who was not only giving up his office today, but of course he is giving up his claim on the presidency. He finished with 500,000 more votes in popular terms than did George W. Bush. But under the rules that we all play by in America, George W. Bush won the electoral vote. The disputed election in Florida was settled at the highest court in the land by a 5-4 decision. And George W. Bush is determined to demonstrate to this country that he is the president of all the people. As one of his aides said, we're going to act as if we won big because we want to get off to a fast start and demonstrate to America that while their expectations may be low, ours are not.
He can't do it any other way. You're president for a very brief time. I'm sure as we watch Bill Clinton today, in his mind, the last 8 years just flew by. You mentioned Al Gore. Not only is it painful losing the election to George W. Bush, but his relationship with Bill Clinton is very strained. Some people suggest they're not even speaking to one another because of the campaign disagreements they had about whether or not he should have embraced Clintonism more than he did.
Let's go to the Hill now and to the VIP area, and NBC's Maria Shriver there is with the new National Security Advisor to the incoming president, Condoleezza Rice. Maria?
Thank you very much, Tom. That's right. I am here with Condoleezza Rice. This is her first inauguration. She said she just came from church and she cried the whole way. What's this been like for you?
It's very exciting, and it's such a wonderful affirmation of America and the peaceful transfer of power. It's really quite moving.
Have you spoken to the president-elect this morning?
I've not spoken to him this morning. I saw him at church just in front of me. It's just a wonderful day for everyone involved.
What does he have to accomplish here today to reach out to the millions of people who felt disenfranchised by this election, who don't feel that he's their president yet?
I believe that all that he has to do is to be himself and to talk in the language of inclusion that he has always used all of his public life. He is a sincere person, and he said time and time again he's going to be the president for everybody. I think he's going to start that with the speech today. That's the way this country is. The American people are going to accept him and embrace him.
I heard Vice President-elect Cheney say just the other day there are a lot of hot spots around the world right now that this administration has got to get onto very quickly. What's going to be your first order of business this week?
Well, I think our first order of business will be to try to really understand what we're facing in a number of parts of the world. I want to say that the Clinton foreign policy team has been terrific. Sandy Berger and Madeleine Albright and Secretary Cohen have been fantastic. We think we're off to a good start, but we'll obviously look hard at places like the Middle East and see what we're facing.
Condoleezza Rice, I know you got to get back to your seat. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Tom, as you can see here on the west side of the Capitol, everybody is dressed in this VIP area in these ponchos that they've handed out, and I've heard a lot of women talking about whether they look stupid or not. That's been the big talk. Obviously, you have all the Chief Justices up here, leaders of the Senate. Now we have coming up Vice President Mrs. Quayle. It's all tightly scripted, tightly orchestrated up here, and you'll see it all as they come down. Back to you.
Thanks very much, NBC's Maria Shriver. That would be a concern for the men and the women alike. They spend a lot of money on a new wardrobe, get just the right dress for inaugural day, and then they have this kind of inclement weather, and they have to put plastic sheeting over it all. As they continue to make their way to the Capitol, the presidential motorcade carrying the two first families and the two vice presidential families. We should tell you that there was some thought today they may have to move this inside. They did that in 1985, you'll recall, for the second inauguration of Ronald Reagan when it was bitterly cold, wind chill of 20 degrees below zero, but they are confident they'll be able to keep this outside today, and no doubt there will be lots of metaphors about gloomy skies, but the promise of a sunnier day tomorrow. Let's go to NBC's Andrea Mitchell now, who is with one of the invited visitors, Rudy Giuliani, the mayor of New York. Andrea?
Thanks, Tom. I'm here with the mayor, who, do you have any second thoughts? You know, Hillary Clinton is going to be, as Senator Clinton, sitting up there.
No, I'm very content with the decision that I made. I get another year as mayor of New York City. I had the last 6 months to go through my treatment for prostate cancer, which will be over within about 2 months, and I'll be back to normal. I'm pretty much back to normal already, I hope.
You told me that you had your last treatment the other day.
I had seeds, radiation, and hormone therapy for 9 months. So that'll last in my system about another 2 or 3 months, and I'm very hopeful that we licked it and cured it, and we'll find out in a few months.
You'll be leaving after your 2 terms, and you can relate to the way Bill Clinton is probably feeling giving up power today.
Yeah, I was thinking about him last night when I came in about 11 o'clock at night. We walked past the White House, took a look at it, and I was thinking about it has to be a sad night no matter what, if you come to the end of your term. But in a certain way, it's actually easier for him as it will be for me. You weren't voted out of office. Right? You're leaving on your own power and by operation of law. So I think actually that's a little bit easier than if you had been voted out of office.
Rudy Giuliani, thanks very much.
Thank
Lots
you,
of luck to you.
Wonderful to see you. Have a happy day.
Thank you. Back to you, Tom.
Thank you, Andrea. It has been a tumultuous final 36 hours for former president, about to be, Bill Clinton, he made a speech to the nation on Thursday night. He struck a deal with the independent prosecutor yesterday in which he'll lose his law license for 5 years and pay a fine. And he acknowledged that he willfully misled the people who were questioning him in the Paula Jones case. And then overnight, he issued another 100 pardons, including one to his brother, former Housing Secretary Henry Cisneros, and Suzanne McDougal, who was a principal figure in the Whitewater case. No pardons for Michael Milken, the junk bond king, or Leonard Peltier, who is serving a life sentence for the murder of 2 FBI agents in the famous or infamous Wounded Knee incident. Now let's go down to NBC's David Gregory, who has been covering the George Bush campaign from the beginning. And David, we do expect this to be a short speech. What's going to be the tone?
Well, it's certainly going to be a tone of unity, a call for unity. We both know this new president to be a plain-spoken fella, as he likes to say. He's going to be to the point. The speech is going to be relatively short. He said as of a couple of days ago, no more than about 13 minutes. Let me share some of the excerpts with you. He's going to promise to make a, quote, new commitment to fulfill the promise of the nation, and he's going to do it through a series of C words: civility, courage, compassion, and character. That last one, of course, a direct shot at the outgoing President Clinton. He will say, quote, "I will live and lead by these principles." And later on, he says, in what will no doubt be an attempt to inspire the nation, especially after the tumultuous election cycle and post-election cycle we've all gone through, quote, "What you do is as important as anything government does." He will call on the country. He'll say, "I'll ask you to be citizens, citizens not spectators, responsible citizens, building communities of service and a nation of character." Certainly themes that we've heard throughout the campaign, Tom, and certainly he'll stick to those principles. Back to you.
Yeah. Thank you very much, NBC's David Gregory. Let's go to NBC's John Siegenthaler, who's there for the arrival of the presidential motorcade. John?
Well, Tom, the limousines have just pulled up in the front of the Capitol, and as we've been talking throughout, this is very tight security for this event, the largest law enforcement presence ever for an inauguration in this country. And there, the limousine with the President of the United States and the President-elect is pulling up to the Capitol. This is the same spot where we saw former President Carter arrive a little while ago, and former President Bush, along with his wife Barbara and the grandchildren Barbara and Jenna. We can only imagine what conversation has been going on inside that limousine as they made their way, as you said, stately way up the avenue up to the Capitol. Tom?
All right, thanks very much, John Siegenthaler. They're now getting out of the presidential motorcade. There's a holding room there in the Capitol Law Library, and they'll be in there for a time. Then there is a ritual that does play out as people are introduced and brought onto the west side of the Capitol. That was the idea of Michael Deaver, who was a principal advisor to President Ronald Reagan, looking west, a man who'd come from the west. It also gives you the panorama of the nation's capital with the mall spread out before you. These are the keepers of the Capitol from the Senate and the House side, the people who make the system work there on a daily basis. And that is some of the crowd that has been assembled. Bob Dole, the former senator and also the former presidential candidate, with his wife Liddy, who may in fact be named to a cabinet post, which would be the UN ambassadorship. There's been some discussion about that, although it's not been resolved yet.
Senator Dole was seen in the lobby of a hotel last night, Tom, practicing the oath of office just in case he was needed. Hasn't lost his humor.
No. There's Vice President Al Gore, who was in this long, bitterly contested election against George W. Bush. 3 baby boomers. And then Dick Cheney, who is the senior member of the team. He was born during the war. And Jeb Bush, the governor of Florida, a man who was in all the intersections of the disputed election there as well. He had originally had been thought to be the best hope in the Bush family to become the president, but he lost his first run for governor in Florida, Lawton Childs, and his brother won in Texas unexpectedly against Ann Richards. And so he got to be the presidential candidate, and Jeb had the daunting task of trying to deliver Florida. That's his son next to him, who is now a law student and a major heartthrob in this country.
George P.
George P. Well, look at that. The governor and the brother of the new president-elect is like every other tourist. He's got his little throwaway camera there and taking
Kodak moment.
Right. Maria Shriver, you still down there?
Relegated back into the very back, but I'm still here and I can still see everything. It's rather interesting to note that all the Bush family members, which is kind of interesting, they're all taking pictures of themselves right up as close to the podium as they can get. They can't even get that close, but you can get a real sense here that this is very much of a family event. They're grouping off cousins together, taking pictures. Everybody's got Instamatics, and you see a lot of schmoozing going on up here between people who are cabinet designees and leaders of the Senate and the House. So while everybody stands here in the rain waiting, there's a lot of politicking and a lot of backslapping going on up here. Tom?
Thank you, Maria. Well, we have to have a weatherman on a day like this, and no better weatherman than Al Roker, who will not only be telling us what the forecast is, but no doubt he'll be greeting some of the people as well. Al, are we going to get through this without snow?
Well, I certainly think, Tom, that we're going to get through the inaugural ceremony without snow, and even more importantly, without a lot of rain. We've got some light drizzle right now, and that's about the worst of it. I think what we're going to be looking at is maybe some heavier rain mixed with sleet just about the time the parade starts. And by around 4 or 5 o'clock, I think it'll start to change over to some snow. The interesting thing, back in the original inaugural was March 4th. That was the original date, but they decided, because they thought, well, what the heck? It takes about 4 months or so to get the word across the entire country. But then they have decided after FDR's first inaugural to move it to January 20th. And the interesting thing, the first time they did that in January 20th, 1937, it was the rainiest inaugural ever. They had about 2 inches of rain, a temperature of about 35. Right now, we've got about 36 degrees out with a wind chill of about 20. So it's kind of interesting that we are looking at weather very much like what they had on that first inaugural day back in 1937, Tom.
Thank you very much, Al Roker. You'll see some Texans later on with rain covers for their cowboy hats because they brought their boots and their hats to this. This is going to be a Texas moment for them and a greater Texas flavor, obviously, during the next 4 years at least. NBC's Lisa Myers is on Capitol Hill. There are members of Congress. Well, let's take a look at former President Jimmy Carter talking with the incoming Secretary of State, Colin Powell. Jimmy Carter has been a model ex-president working in not just the third world, but in the fourth and fifth world, and using his Carter Center for the resolution of conflict. The two men really did save President Clinton a lot of grief when they went to Haiti and made a deal before the 82nd Airborne had to arrive there in what was going to be a very difficult time. Jenna Bush on your left, one of the twins, and Barbara on your right. I think I finally worked that all out. Jenna Bush had an emergency appendectomy at Christmas time, and then, of course, Barbara Bush and the former president, Poppy, as he's called in the family. What a moment for them today.
I actually had a chance to ask former President Bush last night, how must it feel to have his son become the president? And Tom, his eyes just moistened. He couldn't answer. He just is so overwhelmed with emotion, and it's so wonderful to see.
He's had a hip replacement surgery, so he does have a small limp, but he's getting around. There's a big party for him last night given by his old friend Jim Baker, who was such a pivotal figure in Florida. That's Colin and Alma Powell talking with Rosalynn and Jimmy Carter.
There's Don Evans in the red scarf. President George W. Bush's closest friend, the new Secretary of Commerce.
And just behind and to the right of Mrs. Powell is Paul O'Neill, the new Treasury Secretary. They're in the rain gear that has been handed out. Let's go to NBC's Lisa Myers now. Lisa, tell us about the Congressional Black Caucus.
Well, there's an interesting dynamic going on among many Democrats today, Tom, and that is usually when you set up a live camera on a day like this, you have to beat the politicians away with your umbrella. But today, a number of members of the Black caucus are boycotting this event altogether. They say they don't consider Bush a legitimate president, that this, frankly, is not their party. But even many Democrats who are here today are choosing not to be interviewed. And privately, they tell you they see this as a lose-lose situation. On one hand, they're expected to be gracious. Back to you, Tom.
Thank you, Lisa. We're seeing the Bush daughters now come down the steps and being welcomed onto the VIP platform. Jenna, the one that you see there, is a student at the University of Texas, and her sister Barbara is a student. That's Liddy Dole giving a kiss to Barbara Bush. Is a student at Yale University. They are said to be distinctly different. One likes a good time more than the other. The other one is a little more studious, and I'm not even going to give away the secrets as to which is which. We're going to begin the protection right now. They do deserve to have as normal a life as they possibly can have. Jim Baker there with the red scarf just behind his longtime friend George Bush Sr., Herbert Walker Bush. President and Mrs. Clinton made an appeal to the press corps, which has been largely honored, that Chelsea should be able to go to Stanford and have a life without the constant intrusion of cameras, and by and large that has been honored. And for the Bush family, it's worked out pretty well too. Governor Bush told me last week that the one thing that worries him most of all is that the girls are disappointed that he ran because they think it's going to change their lives. Obviously, they're going to love this moment today, but can they go anywhere without Secret Service agents? No. Will they always be known as the daughters of the president? Yes. And they'll wonder about friends and boyfriends and what their interests are, what motivates them.
You know, Tom, the president-elect planned on emailing his daughters on a daily basis, and now he has said that he cannot email. He is giving up his email because he found out that every note he made, every message he received would be a part of the public record, even to his daughters, which doesn't sound right.
No, and you know, I've talked to Colin Powell about that. He no longer keeps a diary. Here's a man who's been in the cockpit of history, and because he kept some notes when he was at the Defense Department as the chairman of the Joint Chiefs on an airplane deal, he was spent the next year and a half in court or being deposed, and so he just doesn't keep a note anymore. Doris Kearns Goodwin joins us now as we look at all this. She's our presidential historian, not just on staff here, but of course to America. And Doris, there is something that is quite sad about that as we watch Senator Hillary Clinton come now with Tipper Gore, that people can't keep notes or a record anymore without thinking it's going to be in the National Enquirer in 48 hours.
Oh, for those of us who are historians, it's disastrous, not only sad. I mean, when I go back and look at Lincoln, I have diaries of their children, diaries of the husbands and wives, thousands of letters that they wrote to one another, all of which have been saved. We know more about Lincoln's administration than we're going to know about the Clinton administration 100 years from now. I say keep the diary, put it in a closet separately. Don't let them ever know.
Well, we ought to have some legislation, frankly.
That's what we need. There has to be a private life that is protected, and there's nothing more sacred than the words you write to yourself in your diary. Remember, you're a little kid. You preserve that from your parents. We should be able to preserve that from history.
Or not being able to email your own daughters?
No.
Something has gone amok.
Right. Common sense dictates let's do something right now.
Speaking of daughters?
Speaking of daughters, there's Chelsea Clinton, as we have been saying throughout the morning, unusually poised for a young woman of her age and what she has been through with the public difficulties of her father especially, speaking with the Carter family. Maria Shriver down there on the stage. It's beginning to fill up, Maria, so we're pretty close to that moment when we're going to begin to see the new president.
We are very close to that moment, and that'll be very tightly scripted as well. Mrs. Clinton, Senator Clinton will be coming in with Mrs. Gore, President Clinton and Vice President Gore. We should mention that Chief Justice Rehnquist will be giving the oath of office to President-elect Bush. He is also the same Chief Justice who gave the oath of office to his father. Another little thing for trivia experts is that Franklin Graham, Reverend Billy Graham's son, will be doing his first invocation. Reverend Billy Graham did it for his father. And now coming in, you see coming down here, I believe, is Mrs. Senator Clinton and Mrs. Gore, who I believe are coming here. All eyes are now towards that door as people come down. The last few VIP guests come down here, down these steps. come through the Capitol out here onto the west side. Senator Clinton and Mrs. Gore. Obviously a very emotional day for both of them as they begin their new lives after today.
Maria, let's just pause for a moment and watch this. Let our audience absorb this moment and collect their own thoughts as we see Lynn Cheney and Laura Bush. Doris Kearns Goodwin, there is a kind of populist majesty about all of this. These Americans who come from all walks of life, some from Arkansas, some from Wyoming, some from Texas, some from Tennessee, gather together on this day, surrounded by the people's representatives in the House and in the Senate, in the Capitol, which is, after all, the people's house, to make the transfer of power to the White House.
No
and
question.
We do it in a ritual that has been worked out over many, many years. It stays the same. We have a fixed date, the 20th Amendment to the Constitution. It's quite reassuring.
Oh, I think there's no question. It's one of those moments when you really feel the past and you feel the present and you even feel the future. And people know that George Washington used the same Bible that these people will be using today. Think of that. I mean, that's just an amazing thing. The first time it really became a people's ceremony was Andrew Jackson, however, when everybody floated from Tennessee, even overrunning the White House until there was so much drinking going on. They had to throw the kegs outside to get the people outside. But except for that problem, it's great that it's a people's ceremony.
We have some advanced degrees among these women. Laura Bush has a master's degree in a Master of Science in Library Science, and Lynn Cheney has a PhD in English Literature from the University of Colorado, as I remember.
In fact, I think it's the first time that all the candidates' wives had advanced degrees. It shows the future is going to mean that First Ladies will be much more active forces. I think Hillary Clinton will be a beacon for the future rather than some eccentric person as Eleanor Roosevelt was. There's no way you can keep these ladies down once they've been doing something before they get there, and I think it's great.
Tricia Lott passing in front of Laura Bush right now.
When you look at Laura Bush, Tom, you can only think how many times she's been asked, when you first met George W. Bush, did you ever dream he'd be president of the United States? And she says, no.
No. And neither did members of his family or his college classmates or his prep school classmates. He was, by his own description and theirs as well, pretty much a party-hardy guy who did drift through the first few years of his life until he got some objectives as the owner of the Texas Rangers, obviously, and then got into politics, running first for Congress and losing, then running for the governorship.
You know, it's interesting, even the other son, John Quincy Adams, once said, I'd rather clean filth off the street than go into politics. But he felt the pressure of his father. His father said, if you don't make it to the highest office, it'll be laziness, slovenliness. So there's a little pressure there. I don't think this guy felt the pressure in the same way. I think it's sort of eventually came to him. He didn't feel it from the time he was a kid,
although
the way Quincy did.
His dad is calling him Quincy.
Yes, I noticed.
Now the outgoing administration. The gaggle of photographers that will follow the new president everywhere. Diana Walker, there in the lead from Time Magazine, a Washington resident who's one of the very best of the press photographers in this town. And the Secret Service agents and the other attendants from Capitol Hill. Chris Dodd trailing the vice president and the president with Richard Gephardt, who is the Democratic leader in the House. We can only wonder what Al Gore must be thinking as he walks down there now as the outgoing vice president after this long and difficult campaign that he ran against George W. Bush. knowing that he did get more popular votes, but not enough electoral college votes to become the president. We still don't know what he's going to do, nor do we know exactly what President Clinton's going to do once they leave office.
Not much small talk between the president and vice president, Tom. Both looking straight ahead. Difficult walk for Al Gore.
One can only imagine that he's thinking 4 years from now, maybe it will be a different kind of walk, just as it was 8 years before.
The other thought that you could have is that, oh, God, do I have to go through that again? It's so exhausting. You have to start 2 years from now, you know, go out and organize across the country, raise the money, get everybody in place. People are just going to say you were a loser once. They're going to be coming after him in a different way than they did the last time. Let's just watch them come in here for a moment now and let our audience absorb this moment. They've slipped on top coats. Tipper with her camera out. She took it very hard, this loss, not unexpectedly. Quite bitter. The vice president was optimistic to the very end. He honestly thought that he was going to win either in the courts or by count in Florida and become the president. He was deeply immersed in the process. That's an exclusive club. Presidents of the United States right there, 2 members.
The man who defeated George Bush for president in 1992, and now the inauguration of his son, who defeated Bill Clinton's hand-picked vice president. What's going on through their minds? Dick Cheney, who will be turning 60 years old in just a matter of 10 days, Tom Brokaw.
I know something about that birthday.
Very young.
And even if you're vice president, it's not fun. I think Dick Cheney proved to be an enormous asset for George W. Bush, both during the campaign and especially in the post-election period. The country saw him in that debate against Joe Lieberman, and they were deeply impressed by his judgment and his calmness and his ability to articulate positions. He has served in the highest positions in government short of the presidency: Defense Secretary, White House Chief of Staff, member of Congress for 10 years. A conservative voting record, to say the least, but a man who was highly regarded across party lines here for his judgment on big issues.
The office of the vice presidency just seems to be accumulating power with each new president. It's something that I think anyone who's interested in serving the country or in higher office should want to have now, compared to the past when it was seen like a graveyard. It is totally transformed from what it once was.
A little nerve-wracking experience.
Lady Bird Johnson is there as well, as part of the...
Oh, isn't that amazing? You know, Mrs. Woodrow Wilson was at John Kennedy's inauguration.
Mrs. Bush, Laura Bush, has said that she really admires her. That's one of the first ladies that she thinks so highly of. Another Texan, obviously.
And so she should. She had grace, class. She was an extraordinary first lady.
Dick Cheney followed by Republican leaders Dick Armey and Trent Lott. Well, now they're chatting a little bit. You know, Harry Truman was not told by FDR about the development of the atomic bomb. Can you imagine that? Then FDR died, and guess who had to make the decision about whether we were going to drop it?
Yeah, I think it was one of FDR's greatest failures. I think he couldn't face his own illness and his own potential death. He didn't want to think about it. So giving that information to his successor seemed too hard, but it left him totally bereft. But he made the decision. with never looking back.
Exactly the same expression George W. Bush had walking out on the stage for the debates. He was into his zone, it seems. It's time to be serious, and there will be no more serious moment in his lifetime in 17 minutes from now.
He brings his athletic demeanor to these occasions, it seems to me, Tim. He gets himself kind of physically up for the moment, and the confidence in his stride, the body language that he gives off. And having grown up in that family, obviously, he's been through big occasions before, which helps some too.
It's something you have to learn, isn't it, Doris? How do you carry yourself as a president? Everyone's watching you at every moment.
You can't slouch at a moment like this. You know, as you're right, though, you brought up in that family from the time he's been little, he's been learning how to shake hands with people, to be polite. You watch that in the Kennedy family, so it's ingrown in the blood.
When I asked Mrs. Bush last week if she said, Mr. President-elect, you have to pick up your socks. Things, you know, haven't changed. She said, well, no, it hasn't changed a lot. I still have to tell him to sit up. And he quickly sat up.
Oh, wow.
Ladies and gentlemen, the President-elect of the United States, George Walker Bush, accompanied by Senator Mitch McConnell, Senator Christopher Dodd, Speaker J. Dennis Hastert, Senator Trent Lott, Representative Richard Armey, Representative Richard Gephardt, Jim Ziegler, Senate Sergeant at Arms, Bill Livingood, House Sergeant at Arms, and Tamara Somerville, Chief of Staff, Joint Congressional Committee for Inaugural Ceremonies.
Last-minute advice. This is the first time since 1961, Tom, where a father has been able to witness his son take the oath of office. Joseph Kennedy and John Kennedy.
Oh, yeah, and there's a great story of that. When John Kennedy was coming down the inaugural parade and saw his father in the reviewing stand, he actually saw the father tip his hat to him. Eunice Shriver said she nearly fainted the first time the father had ever given deference to the son. John Kennedy stood up, tipped his hat to his father, the only person he did that. So what a feeling it must be. I mean, there's no way we can underestimate what George Bush Sr. must be feeling.
That, too, was a close election, and I remember Joseph Kennedy said, I didn't pay for a landslide.
That's right. He was a frugal character in the end.
To the 54th inauguration of the President and Vice President of the United States of America. Today we honor the past in commemorating 2 centuries of inaugurations in Washington, D.C. As well, we embrace the future, this day marking the first inauguration of the 21st century and the new millennium. America has now spanned 4 centuries, her promise still shining bright, the beginning and present linked by timeless ideals and faith. The enduring strength of our Constitution, which brings us to the west front of the Capitol today, attests to the wisdom of America's founders and the heroism of generations of Americans who fought wars and toiled in peace to preserve this legacy of liberty. In becoming the 43rd President of the United States, George W. Bush will assume the sacred trust as guardian of our Constitution. Dick Cheney will be sworn in as our new Vice President. Witnessed by the Congress, Supreme Court, governors, and presidents past, the current president will stand by as the new president peacefully takes office. This is a triumph of our democratic republic, a ceremony befitting a great nation. In his father's stead, the Reverend Franklin Graham is with us today to lead the nation in prayer. Please stand for the invocation. Reverend Graham.
Let us pray. Blessed are you, O Lord our God. Yours, O God, is the greatness and the power and the glory and the majesty and the splendor. For everything in heaven and earth is yours. Yours, O Lord, is the kingdom. You are exalted as head over all. Wealth and honor come from you. You are the ruler of all things. In your hands are strength and power to exalt and to give strength to all. As President Lincoln once said, we have been the recipients of the choicest bounties of heaven. We have been preserved these many years in peace and prosperity. We have grown in numbers, wealth, and power, as no other nation has ever grown, but we have forgotten God. It behooves us then to humble ourselves before the offended powers, to confess our national sins, and to pray for clemency and forgiveness. O Lord, as we come together on this historic and solemn occasion to inaugurate once again a president and vice president, teach us afresh that power, wisdom, and salvation come only from your hand. We pray, O Lord, for President-elect George W. Bush and Vice President-elect Richard B. Cheney, to whom you have entrusted leadership of this nation at this moment in history. We pray that you'll help them bring our country together so that we may rise above partisan politics and seek the larger vision of your will for our nation. Use them to bring reconciliation between the races, healing to political wounds, that we may truly become one nation under God. Give our new president and all who advise him calmness in the face of storms, encouragement in the face of frustration, and humility in the face of success. Give them the wisdom to know and to do what is right, and the courage to say no to all that is contrary to your statutes and holy law. Lord, we pray for their families, and especially their wives, Laura Bush and Lynn Cheney, that they may sense your presence and know your love. Today we entrust to you President and Senator Clinton and Vice President and Mrs. Gore. Lead them as they journey through new doors of opportunity to serve others. Now, O Lord, we dedicate this presidential inaugural ceremony to you. May this be the beginning of a new dawn for America as we humble ourselves before you and acknowledge you alone as our Lord, our Savior, and our Redeemer. We pray this in the name of the Father, and of the Son, the Lord Jesus Christ, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Thank you, Reverend Graham. It is my distinct pleasure to introduce the DuPont Manual Choir of Louisville, Kentucky. Senator Christopher J. Dodd of Connecticut to introduce the Chief Justice of the United States.
Thank you, Senator McConnell. President and Senator Clinton, Vice President and Mrs. Gore, President-elect and Mrs. Bush, and fellow citizens. The Vice President-elect will now take the oath of office. His wife, Lynn, and their daughters, Elizabeth Cheney Perry and Mary Cheney, will hold the family Bible. I have the honor and privilege to now present the Chief Justice of the United States Supreme Court, the Honorable William Hobbs Rehnquist, to administer the oath of office to the Vice President-elect, Richard Bruce Cheney.
Mr. Cheney, are you ready to take the oath?
I am.
Please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Richard Bruce Cheney, do solemnly swear.
I, Richard Bruce Cheney, do solemnly swear
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States.
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States
against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
Against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
That I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same.
That I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same.
That I take this obligation freely.
That I take this obligation freely.
Without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion.
Without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion.
And that I will well and faithfully discharge.
And that I will well and faithfully discharge.
The duties of the office on which I am about to enter.
The duties of the office on which I am about to enter.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations, Mr. President.
We have a new president in waiting. Richard Bruce Cheney shaking hands with the outgoing Vice President Al Gore. He flunked out of Yale twice, went back, worked as a power lineman for a year, and then ended up at the University of Wyoming, did graduate work at the University of Wisconsin, and came here and became a wonder kid almost immediately.
You know, watching him kiss his wife, when Garfield kissed his mother at his presidential inauguration, the press thought it was lacking in dignity. It was theatrical. Now they all kiss.
The United States Army Band will now perform an American medley. It is now my high honor to again present the Chief Justice of the United States, who will administer the presidential oath of office. Everyone, please stand.
Governor, are you ready to take the oath?
I am, sir.
Please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, George Walker Bush, do solemnly swear
I, George Walker Bush, do solemnly swear
that I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States
that I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States
and will, to the best of my ability, preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States.
preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations.
21-gun salute, the outgoing president and the new president. The man he vanquished in a long, difficult campaign, Al Gore, Senator Dodd, the new president of the United States, George Walker Bush, with his father. Second time in American history, and he is obviously very moved by this historic moment and deeply personal moment in his life. He said last week he would try to stay focused and not look at his parents, but when he embraced his father, understandably, it was a moment in which he deserved to be as emotional as he obviously is.
John Adams was 90 years old when his son became president. He said nothing made him more blissfully happy, so intense he couldn't even express his feelings. I can only imagine what Mr. Bush Sr. is thinking.
Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States, George W. Bush.
Thank you all. Chief Justice Rehnquist, President Carter, President Bush, President Clinton, distinguished guests, and my fellow citizens. The peaceful transfer of authority is rare in history, yet common in our country. With a simple oath, we affirm old traditions and make new beginnings. As I begin, I thank President Clinton for his service to our nation. And I thank Vice President Gore for a contest conducted with spirit and ended with grace. I am honored and humbled to stand here where so many of America's leaders have come before me, and so many will follow. We have a place, all of us, in a long story, a story we continue, but whose end we will not see. It is a story of a new world that became a friend and liberator of the old. The story of a slave-holding society that became a servant of freedom. The story of a power that went into the world to protect but not possess, to defend but not to conquer. It is the American story, a story of flawed and fallible people, united across the generations by grand and enduring ideals. The grandest of these ideals is an unfolding American promise that everyone belongs, that everyone deserves a chance, that no insignificant person was ever born. Americans are called to enact this promise in our lives and in our laws. And though our nation has sometimes halted and sometimes delayed, we must follow no other course. Through much of the last century, America's faith in freedom and democracy was a rock in a raging sea. Now it is a seed upon the wind, taking root in many nations. Our democratic faith is more than the creed of our country. It is the inborn hope of our humanity, an ideal we carry but do not own, a trust we bear and pass along. And even after nearly 225 years, we have a long way yet to travel. While many of our citizens prosper, others doubt the promise, even the justice of our own country. The ambitions of some Americans are limited by failing schools and hidden prejudice and the circumstances of their birth. And sometimes our differences run so deep, it seems we share a continent, but not a country. We do not accept this, and we will not allow it. Our unity, our union, is the serious work of leaders and citizens in every generation. And this is my solemn pledge. I will work to build a single nation of justice and opportunity. I know this was in our reach because we are guided by a power larger than ourselves, who creates us equal in his image. And we are confident in principles that unite and lead us onward. America has never been united by blood or birth or soil. We are bound by ideals that move us beyond our backgrounds, lift us above our interests, and teach us what it means to be citizens. Every child must be taught these principles. Every citizen must uphold them. And every immigrant, by embracing these ideals, makes our country more, not less, American. Today, we affirm a new commitment to live out our nation's promise through civility, courage, compassion, and character. America at its best matches a commitment to principle with a concern for civility. A civil society demands from each of us goodwill and respect, fair dealing, and forgiveness. Some seem to believe that our politics can afford to be petty because in a time of peace, the stakes of our debates appear small. But the stakes for America are never small. If our country does not lead the cause of freedom, it will not be led. If we do not turn the hearts of children toward knowledge and character, we will lose their gifts and undermine their idealism. If we permit our economy to drift and decline, the vulnerable will suffer most. We must live up to the calling we share. Civility is not a tactic or a sentiment. It is the determined choice of trust over cynicism, of community over chaos. And this commitment, if we keep it, is a way to shared accomplishment. America at its best is also courageous. Our national courage has been clear in times of depression and war, when defeating common dangers defined our common good. Now we must choose if the example of our fathers and mothers will inspire us or condemn us. We must show courage in a time of blessing by confronting problems instead of passing them on to future generations. Together we will reclaim America's schools before ignorance and apathy claim more young lives. We will reform Social Security and Medicare sparing our children from struggles we have the power to prevent. And we'll reduce taxes to recover the momentum of our economy and reward the effort and enterprise of working Americans. We will build our defenses beyond challenge, lest weakness invite challenge. We will confront weapons of mass destruction so that a new century is spared new horrors. The enemies of liberty in our country should make no mistake. America remains engaged in the world by history and by choice, shaping a balance of power that favors freedom. We will defend our allies and our interests. We will show purpose without arrogance. We will meet aggression and bad faith with resolve and strength. And to all nations, we will speak for the values that gave our nation birth. America at its best is compassionate. In the quiet of American conscience, we know that deep, persistent poverty is unworthy of our nation's promise. And whatever our views of its cause, we can agree that children at risk are not at fault. Abandonment and abuse are not acts of God. They are failures of love. And the proliferation of prisons, however necessary, is no substitute for hope and order in our souls. Where there is suffering, there is duty. Americans in need are not strangers. They are citizens, not problems, but priorities. And all of us are diminished when any are hopeless. Government has great responsibilities for public safety and public health, for civil rights and common schools. Yet compassion is the work of a nation, not just a government. And some needs and hurts are so deep, they will only respond to a mentor's touch or a pastor's prayer. Church and charity, synagogue and mosque lend our communities their humanity, and they will have an honored place in our plans and in our laws. Many in our country do not know the pain of poverty, but we can listen to those who do. And I can pledge our nation to a goal. When we see that wounded traveler on the road to Jericho, we will not pass to the other side. America at its best is a place where personal responsibility is valued and expected. Encouraging responsibility is not a search for scapegoats. It is a call to conscience. And though it requires sacrifice, it brings a deeper fulfillment. We find the fullness of life not only in options, but in commitments. And we find that children and community are the commitments that set us free. Our public interest depends on private character, on civic duty and family bonds and basic fairness, on uncounted, unhonored acts of decency, which give direction to our freedom. Sometimes in life we're called to do great things, but as a saint of our times has said, every day we are called to do small things with great love. The most important tasks of a democracy are done by everyone. I will live and lead by these principles, to advance my convictions with civility, to pursue the public interest with courage, to speak for greater justice and compassion, to call for responsibility and try to live it as well. In all these ways, I will bring the values of our history to the care of our times. What you do is as important as anything government does. I ask you to seek a common good beyond your comfort, to defend needed reforms against easy attacks, to serve your nation beginning with your neighbor. I ask you to be citizens, citizens not spectators, citizens not subjects, responsible citizens building communities of service and a nation of character. Americans are generous and strong and decent not because we believe in ourselves, but because we hold beliefs beyond ourselves. When this spirit of citizenship is missing, no government program can replace it. When this spirit is present, no wrong can stand against it. After the Declaration of Independence was signed, Virginia statesman John Page wrote to Thomas Jefferson, "We know the race is not to the swift, nor the battle to the strong. Do you not think an angel rides in the whirlwind and directs this storm?" Much time has passed since Jefferson arrived for his inauguration. The years and changes accumulate. But the themes of this day, he would know. Our nation's grand story of courage and its simple dream of dignity. We are not this story's author, who fills time and eternity with his purpose. Yet his purpose is achieved in our duty, and our duty is fulfilled in service to one another. Never tiring, never yielding, never finishing, we renew that purpose today to make our country more just and generous, to affirm the dignity of our lives and every life. This work continues. The story goes on, and an angel still rides in the whirlwind and directs this storm. God bless you all, and God bless America.
George W. Bush, the first president of the 21st century, the 43rd president of the United States, in a speech, as promised, that was short in length and touched on fundamental themes that are important to him, beginning with citizenship, civility, opportunity, education, and duty. Also on the themes that he believed got him elected, of cutting taxes, a stronger defense, and reforming Medicare and Social Security.
Please stand now as Pastor Kirby John H. Caldwell will now deliver the benediction. And afterward, please remain standing for the singing of our national anthem, after which the ceremony will be concluded. I call upon Senator Dodd to organize the presidential party after the ceremony has ended to depart the platform. Pastor Caldwell.
Thank you, Senator McConnell. Let us pray, please. Almighty God, the supply and supplier of peace, prudent policy, and nonpartisanship, we bless your holy and righteous name. Thank you, O God, for blessing us with forgiveness, with faith, and with favor. Forgive us for choosing pride over purpose. Forgive us for choosing popularity over principles. And forgive us for choosing materialism over morals. Deliver us from these and all other evils and cast our sins into your sea of forgetfulness to be remembered no more. And Lord, not only do we thank you for our forgiveness, we thank you for faith. Faith to believe that every child can learn and no child will be left behind and no youth will be left out. Thank you for blessing us with the faith to believe that all of your leaders can sit down and reason with one another so that each American is blessed. Thank you for blessing us with the faith to believe that the walls of inequity can be torn down and the gaps between the rich and the poor, the haves and the have-nots, the uneducated and the educated can and will be closed. And Lord, lastly, we thank you for favor. We thank you for your divine favor. Let your favor be upon President Clinton and the outgoing administration. May they go forth in spiritual grace and civic greatness. And of course, oh Lord, let your divine favor be upon President George W. Bush and First Lady Laura Welch Bush and their family. We decree and declare that no weapon formed against them shall prosper. Let your divine favor be upon the Bush team and all Americans. With the rising of the sun and the going down of the same, may we grow in our willingness and ability to bless you and bless one another. We respectfully submit this humble prayer in the name that's above all other names, Jesus the Christ. Let all who agree say amen.
The first salute from the Commander-in-Chief.
There is a hug given by the President to the Vice President. Vice President Al Gore, who now goes off to an uncertain future. He has not shared it with his closest advisors even about what he's going to do if he does in fact know. The President and the First Lady comes here knowing that he has won the election, but that he trailed his opponent by 500,000 votes. John Kennedy used to keep a note in his pocket with 118,000 votes on it because that's the margin by which he had won. There's the Vice President. It is the political reality going into this day. About 44% of the country said that they had high expectations for the new president. It's a wait-and-see attitude out there, the likes of which I can't remember for a long time. Now, as to the speech, all modern presidents have the curse of being measured against John Kennedy in 1960. Even the best of the speechmakers, Ronald Reagan and Bill Clinton included. That is one that will live forever. This, it seems to me, is a speech that is very reflective of George W. Bush. Workmanlike, short, and simple themes.
It's important to remember that John Kennedy felt he had the curse of Franklin Roosevelt to deal with. In fact, in the earlier draft of an inauguration, he had said all this will not be accomplished in the first 100 days. He slashed it out, and he made it 1,000 days. He didn't want to be compared with Roosevelt. Sadly, 1,000 days would be exactly the length of his life. So I think none of them like to be compared to the greats. So, of course, Lincoln stands above them all, so they don't even need to try.
Tom, if you read this speech 10 years from now, you would say it was written by someone who would be described as a compassionate conservative. That's who George Bush is. That's who he wants to be. And it was quite interesting in Kennedy's speech when he rallied the country to work on its behalf and against communism, if you will. It was a common enemy. The two big applause lines this morning, tax cuts and rebuilding our nation's defenses. Two themes that George Bush pounded away on his entire campaign. He seems to understand, and Bill Clinton has mentioned this regularly to people, that when you don't live in times of war, it's very hard to be perceived as a great president.
Indeed, I think that's right. Interestingly, though, he did talk about government having responsibilities for civil rights, for common schools, for public health. That's in contrast to Reagan, who said government is the problem, not the solution. So it shows that that compassionate conservatism has a somewhat different role for government than the traditional Republicans in the Reagan ideology.
Even Newt Gingrich says that this is a different time, and that this party has to reach out to people of color. Democrats have to reach out, on the other hand, to the center part of the country where people still have a faith-based ideology in many instances and respect their values. I think that there's a common recognition in Washington that the country longs for a healing and moving forward. It's a wariness, on the other hand, on the part of the Democrats. They don't want to be co-opted by him. They don't want to be drawn into something for which he gets all of the victories and all of the respect and gets all the political capital that comes around him in 2002 in the congressional elections. So this is going to be, for the next 18 months, a time of great wariness and people maneuvering out there on that dance floor called Washington.
How do you become victorious in the year 2002 by engaging in politics that are not perceived as being obstructionist? And Democrats haven't quite figured that out. And George W. Bush, on the other hand, has decided to rush Congress with education, with prescription drugs, and tax cuts, and try to get them to move very, very quickly. Tom, as we speak, in fact, the Senate is going to convene and in voice votes confirm much of Bush's cabinet, because they have to go to work Monday morning, even if they're in there alone. The secretaries of defense and agriculture will be there.
Chelsea Clinton and her father walking out. He's now the former president of the United States. It's not a bad job. Secret Service protection, you get a very substantial budget for office space where you'd like it. He's decided the Carnegie Hall location in New York, where his wife is the junior senator from that state, the junior senator who will get a lot of attention, it goes without saying. Let's go to NBC's Maria Shriver, who's down there in the VIP section, where she's been in the past as well. Maria?
That's right, Tom. We are here. Everybody, as you can see, is filing out. It was quite somber up here once the president-elect took the oath of office. Very quiet as he spoke, and clearly the whole family, everybody moving out now. When he walked up this part, right where I am now, I saw him blow kisses and do a peace sign to all of his friends who are up here, who came here from Texas. There's been a lot of focus here on, obviously, former President Bush being the father of a president. We should not forget that Barbara Bush is probably the first woman in American history to see her husband sworn in as president and her son. So not to let all the attention be on the former president, because she's obviously such a pivotal figure. He came out as he walked through here, gave her 2 kisses and spoke a few moments to his parents. Everybody here still wearing these ponchos, but still very happy. I have to say, not a lot of complaints, even though it's cold and dreary up here. People are excited. A lot of new cabinet members saying this was their first inauguration. Some obviously have been here before, are veterans, but some are new people here and are very excited about being up here on the platform. Everybody has Instamatics, so you get a real sense of excitement up here, I have to say. Tom?
Thank you very much, Maria Shriver. Now they'll be going to the luncheon that is traditional. It's in Statuary Hall here in the nation's capital, where they have statues of the heroes from the various states around the country. Congress gets together. There is a moment of conviviality, good cheer, celebrating the privilege that they all have in being in this seat of power. Someone who was crucial to George W. Bush in the course of that post-election period in the legal battle going on was Ted Olson, who came to Washington with William French Smith, who was the first Attorney General in the Ronald Reagan administration, and Ted Olson is there with NBC's Andrea Mitchell. Andrea?
Thanks a lot, Tom. Some people might argue that George W. Bush might not have been taking this oath of office had you not been his lawyer.
Well, that's a nice thing to say, but
I don't think that's the case. I think that the court would have decided what it decided no matter who was his lawyer. The court decided the case on the merits.
What was going through your mind as you stood here in the rain watching him take that oath?
Well, I think it's a beautiful moment. I think it's always a beautiful moment when a new president takes an oath of office. But of course, I feel a special feeling today because of the litigation in the Supreme Court case. And I think George W. Bush is going to be a fantastic president. And you feel that emotion coming from him today.
Were there times when the Florida Supreme Court ruled, other times when you thought this would never have happened?
There were lots of ups and downs. It was like a roller coaster, and there were huge ups and downs almost every day. Fortunately, it came out the way it did.
Do you think in his speech that he did enough to try to talk about unifying the nation? He talked a lot about civility. He talked about the pettiness of politics. He was really referring to that awful 5-week period, wasn't he?
He was reaching out, I thought, a lot throughout that speech, the words like compassion and civility and commitment. He used the C word a lot in that speech. I thought it was a beautiful speech, a moving speech and an open speech, a reaching out speech. And I think that's the theme that he wanted to set.
I don't want to put you on the spot, but it's part of my job. This talk of you being Solicitor General, representing the United States administration, the Bush administration in front of the U.S. Supreme Court, that would be something that you would be interested in doing if
Well, I'm not going to comment on that.
But there have been conversations.
There have been. I've read things in the paper. That's all I would say.
Thanks very much.
Thank you very much.
Good to see you. Ted Olson, back to you, Tim and Tom.
Thank you very much, Andrea. It's nice of you to mention your boss first before you get to Tom.
Good for you, Andrea.
Interview?
Andrea Mitchell, there with Ted Olson, who obviously is going to be a candidate for the Supreme Court on a very short list when vacancies do occur. And there is the expectation that Chief Justice William Rehnquist, whom we saw today presiding, will likely retire in the next 4 years now that he knows there's a Republican president in place, and that like-minded legal scholars and lawyers would be moved up to the court. The larger and more interesting question in some ways is whether Antonin Scalia becomes the Chief Justice of the U.S. Supreme Court. He was the man who vigorously led the court as it decided in favor of George W. Bush. Now, the two vice presidential couples coming down the steps, preparing, I think, to say goodbye to Bill Clinton, who is going to have to go by motorcade to Andrews Air Force Base, not by marine helicopter, which is the traditional means of transportation, because of the weather. They say goodbye. They've known each other across party lines for some time, obviously. Curiously, Tipper Gore and Lynn Cheney shared some strong feelings about the popular culture in this country. Tipper Gore came to Washington and upset a lot of people in Hollywood with her very strong feelings about the lyrics and rock music and rap music, and saying there ought to be some parental and children's warnings printed on albums, and it became difficult for them from a political point of view. Lynn Cheney has been an outspoken critic of a good deal of the popular culture and the curriculum in schools and universities in the country, saying that there has been a terrible distortion, for example, of the teaching of American history.
That'll be Al Gore's last ride in a government automobile, Tom Brokaw. You mentioned Bill Clinton keeping Secret Service protection and having an office. Al Gore gets none of that.
No.
He gets a $90,000 pension because of his service in the Congress and the Senate and as vice president, but he's moving to a house in Arlington, Virginia. He'll drive his own car, stand in ticket lines at airports like the rest of us. It's going to be a culture shock, I would dare say, for Albert Gore.
It's always a culture shock. My favorite story is when Eisenhower went home after having been president, and he picked up a phone, having had phone calls made for him by secretaries for 20 years, and he hears this buzzing sound. He said, "What is this?" And he's been told it's a dial tone. There's no operators anymore.
Yeah, to go from four-star general to president and then to civilian life would be even a sharper drop. Let's watch this moment.
Good luck.
Take care of yourself.
Kinds of difficulties that the Clinton family had during the course of their term of office, but I remember a wise man by the name of Bryce Harlow saying he watched Dwight Eisenhower take the oath of office, go to the White House, and know that from that moment forward, he was a man who was in some peril because so many things can happen to a president of the United States over which they have no control or happen out of their line of sight. Unexpected events in the economy, international crises of one kind or another, people who work for them or are doing things that they're not supposed to be doing.
I think the new president just said to the new senator, I'll be seeing a lot of you.
Right. He's very at ease in these kinds of moments with people. He's always got a quick quip, quick nicknames for people. And now he walks back with Mrs. Bush, who has a designer in Dallas helping her with her wardrobe.
You know, President Clinton has told people, Tom, that his first year and a half, 2 years were difficult because they were disorganized. And it takes a while to learn how to be president. Certainly George W. Bush has the experience of having watched his father close up. But nonetheless, when you show up to work tomorrow morning, bright and early, you have to structure your day and structure the kind of administration you want. And that is not easy, particularly this one, Tom, because of the whole debacle in Florida. There is not a government in place for George W. Bush. He's lucky to have cabinet secretaries confirmed today. He will have a few, but they don't have deputies. They don't have assistants. There'll be a lot of empty desks in Washington tomorrow.
One thing they do have, for the most part, is experience. Not just those who've been in Washington before, like Don Rumsfeld and Dick Cheney, but those people who come, as Tommy Thompson does from Wisconsin, where he was a governor, knows how to run things and get things done. Gail Norton, who is a controversial nominee for the Interior Department, had been an attorney general in Colorado. John Ashcroft was a senator, has been in this town and knows how to get things organized. We're joined now by David Gergen. I remember, David, when Al Haig was leaving office when he had served as chief of staff for Richard Nixon, I said, what should incoming presidents know that they probably don't know? And he said, the physical management of the place is daunting. He said, it comes in here 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, over the transom, under the door, through the windows, and from all over the world, decisions have to be made. And unless you have systems in place to just deal with the paper flow alone, you quickly drown in it. Now, I've shared that with incoming presidents and their advisors in the past, and the advisors have inevitably said to me 6 months later, you know, I should have listened to you a little more about all that. But it's true, isn't it?
The Carter administration, that would particularly hit Jimmy Carter. After that walk down Pennsylvania Avenue on this very day, those years ago, within a week, he was taking home each night 450 pages of reading from his staff just to keep up with things. And you can't run the White House that way. I do not think the Bush White House will run that way. I think it'll be much more like the Eisenhower White House, and it's very, very orderly. They'll send him just what he needs to know.
Well, the fact is that the Republicans are better at organization for the most part. They tend to get people from corporate life, for example. They tend to have more people who have had military experience and that kind of discipline who come into their administrations, and they put a higher premium on it.
Right, and now we now have the first MBA.
Right.
As president.
That's right.
Yeah.
Harvard, he does have very good academic credentials. Harvard Business School, Yale undergraduate degree, and Phillips Andover, where they're having a reunion of his class from prep school.
There's several hundred of them here. Katie Couric had to put on an Andover hat this morning.
Would you take...
David Gergen, you worked for President Clinton. Talk to us a little bit about the shakedown period that you observed, the president coming into his own, learning on the job, if you will.
I think it was a real shock to him, the kind Tom just mentioned. He said subsequently it took him a year and a half to learn how to do the job right. And the difficulty is this: your power all comes early, but your knowledge base is the smallest. You're the greenest early, and you have the most power. And what happens over time is your power goes down, and as you learn more about the job, your experience goes way up. But the problem is, by the time you know how to do the job, your power can often be gone. And that's why it's so important to get off to a fast start. And I think that's why George W. Bush will be well served by having these veterans. They have done this. They are playing it by the book. Everything they have done since the Florida decision has been by the book. And I think in that sense, they've done well.
When I asked him last week what will surprise us at the end of 100 days, he said, and it wasn't just a rhetorical flourish, he said, you'll be surprised by how much we get done. And what they're going to try to do is find that common ground in which they can get Democrats on board as well.
That's right. But Tom, what was missing, so interesting in this speech today, you remember in his father's inaugural address, the most famous line out of that was, "This is the age of the offered hand." There was no offered hand in this speech. There was a lot more iron.
We'll see how that plays out in the course of the next couple of days. And one of the things that you'll want to keep your eyes on, of course, is the meeting Wednesday between John McCain, when he goes to the White House, and the new president, because John McCain is determined to take the floor of the Senate and stay there as long as he has to until he gets campaign finance reform. Let's go to Claire Shipman, who's at the White House now, to talk about the final hours of the Clinton presidency, including 100 pardons that were played out. Claire?
That's right, Tom. It was interesting because we were told yesterday that the pardons were going to come at the very end of the day, but in true Clinton style, he spent much of the night agonizing about just who would be on that list. You mentioned some of them earlier, but he spent a lot of time agonizing apparently about whether to give a pardon to Susan McDougal, his old friend from Arkansas, a character in the Whitewater drama, somebody who went to prison instead of cooperating with that. In the end, Susan McDougal was one of the people on that list, as were former members of his administration, Henry Cisneros, who was convicted in giving money to an ex-mistress, former CIA Director John Deutsch, who will now be able to avoid criminal charges for misusing U.S. secrets on his home computer. Some of the people that were not on the list were also notable. Webb Hubbell, also an old Clinton friend, was not on that list. Neither was Mike Milken, a Wall Street financier that a lot of people thought would get a pardon from Clinton. But again, the fact that they put them all out this morning was quite surprising, and they had not intended, at least last night, to try to step on George W. Bush's day in that way. But again, for those of us who covered the Clinton White House, it didn't come as any great surprise.
Claire, do you have any sense of what's going on in there right now? Traditionally, it's kind of frantic for the workmen and the cleaners and the household staff.
It is, and we can see it all from the outside. One of the things that they do traditionally is change the drapes. It's a symbolic change that goes on as the ceremony is going on down there, and that's been happening, a lot of moving, cleaning, that sort of thing. Tom?
Okay, thanks very much, NBC's Claire Shipman. Another thing that will work well for the George W. Bush White House, we believe, is that his immediate staff it's made up of veterans as well. Andrew Card, who served in the transportation department here and then ran the convention for him this summer as someone who's been around Washington for a long time. And he was saying this week that it's important for a new president to have a chief of staff who's not a personal friend so that he can fire him if, in fact, it's not working out. And Card absolutely understands the terms of his tenure there as the chief of staff. Let's go back to Maria Shriver now at the Capitol. Maria?
Oh, thank you very much, Tom.
Claire, I'm sorry, Maria. We're going to just take a moment and watch the president sign.
Hey, Mr. Chairman.
Strom Thurmond standing behind him. He's been everywhere this week.
98 years old.
98 years old, too short of a century.
And fourth in line of succession to the presidency as the Senate pro tem of the U.S. Senate.
Fair amount of speculation about whether if Strom Thurmond does not finish his term, there's a Democratic senator in South Carolina, and that would change the balance of power in the U.S. Senate.
There's also a lot of speculation about just what George Bush may be signing here in the next few days, because there are a lot of papers being prepared for him to roll back the actions of the Clinton administration's last couple of weeks. I think they're going to move fast on that.
Yeah, it's the Monuments Act, among other things. Bill Clinton determined to leave a legacy that was greater than Theodore Roosevelt in terms of locking up lands in the West and declaring monuments. The stretch of the Missouri River north of Great Falls, for example, which is the Lewis and Clark stretch, he declared that Pompey's Monument, which is a place where you can still see William Clark's name carved on the Yellowstone River, and other bigger tracts of land, obviously, in the West. And this whole business of not building roads in a national forest. There's still some question, though, isn't there, Dave, about the authority of the new president to be able to do that automatically?
There is, and they've been studying that long and hard in the Bush group. But they're going to try to roll back some of these wilderness provisions, and it could be the first major storm of controversy when people actually look at those. One of the things one provision he has is if Clinton did it in the past week, he can prevent any kind of new regulation from being printed in the federal documents, and if it never gets printed, it never goes into effect. So he wants to do that very quickly. But it's interesting. I think they feel that they're going to be operating on two tracks. One, they'll have a charm offensive with Congress over the next 2 weeks, and they'll be very bipartisan. At the same time, they'll be quietly signing all these regulations and rolling things back that the Clinton administration did.
That's in part because a big part of his political base is in the Rocky Mountain West.
Right,
and
exactly.
he wants to be able to hang on to that.
Exactly. Yeah, but it'd be interesting how much of a clash there is between, on one hand, reaching out, and the other hand, pulling back the things from the Clinton years.
All right, now Maria Shriver.
Thank you very much, Tom. I'm here with two veteran political senators, Bob Graham and John Kerry. And I was just asking you, Senator Graham, what was your take on the speech?
I thought it was an extremely well-written speech. It had a couple of major themes. One was unity, recognizing the closeness of the election, and the other was a call to citizens' action beyond what government does.
But you said to me earlier that it didn't have the drama.
I thought the physical conditions that under which it was delivered helped to restrict the degree of drama that it might have otherwise had.
Senator Kerry, do you think that this speech reached out to the millions of Democrats or people who voted for Al Gore who are still angry about this election?
Not in a specific way, no. It did in a general way, in the way that Senator Graham just talked about. It was sort of more thematic. But it didn't really reach out in that specific way. I thought, to me, the most interesting thing, and it was elegantly written. It was a better written speech, I think, in many ways. But it was the theme of children. I think he's set a high standard for himself now, leaving no child behind. We're not going to let any wounded person on the road to Jericho not be addressed. That's a tall order for the Republican Party. And I want to see how compassionate conservatism is defined in the context of meeting what he's now really reiterated today.
But that was a theme very much of his campaign,
Well,
leaving no child behind.
I think it's a tall order. And I think a lot of us will see what happens on health care for children, after-school programs for children, early child education. There are many things that Republicans have resisted here in past years. If he can lead on those and if he can take us down that road, that would be a significant difference.
But he didn't really reach out or bring people together as much as he could have or as much as you expected today?
Well, I think he went as far as he thought he could go, particularly in the first half of the speech. I thought he was gracious in his comments about President Clinton and Vice President Gore and their service to the country. Frankly, he's going to have to go beyond that now that he has assumed the office if he's to achieve his objective of unifying behind these themes. And I agree with what John said, that the challenge on children, health care, education, is going to be a very high standard that he set for himself.
Senator Graham, Senator Kerry, thank you so much. I know you have to run into the luncheon and it's raining out here. Thank you for joining us. Back up to you, Tom. You heard from them that they thought it was a gracious speech, a well-written speech, but that he has set himself a tall order and a lot of work to be done in this coming week.
All right, Maria Shriver looking like Nanook of the North down there in the VIP section as she's all bundled up against the elements. David Gergen joins us now. One of the things that this, picking up where they left off, they were quite correct in saying that he talked a lot about helping people and helping people along the way. But his party on Capitol Hill, for example, doesn't like the idea of more money for Head Start, as one example. He wants to shift a lot of that to faith-based institutions in America, let the churches take over and community foundations and so on. That's another potential clash for him.
Absolutely. And what's so interesting, Tom, about that is that I'm still getting over the Chinook of the North about Maria Shriver. That his main agenda was packed into one paragraph. And it's all about defense and Medicare and Social Security and tax cuts. It is not about helping children or all the rest of it. The material about children and everything else was more like grace notes, and it was very unclear that there was an action program attached to that. It was more like we as a country should pay more attention, but it was not as if we will do it through the federal government.
Tom, let the record show it took about 30 minutes for one of the leading contenders for the 2004 Democratic nomination, John Kerry, to throw down the gauntlet on the issue of children with the incoming president. It's remarkable, but it's a perfect metaphor for Washington. Mr. President, you have set the standard. Now we're going to tell you.
We're going to hold you against it.
You better be held accountable. If not, I may be challenging you.
We're going to tell you about what those documents were that the president was signing when we saw him with that very bold signature that will become so familiar to all of us. The proclamation for National Day of Prayer and Thanksgiving tomorrow, Sunday, January 21st. A memo to his staff setting forth ethical standards for his administration entitled The Standards of Official Conduct. The memo includes more than a dozen specific points for ethical standards. It's worth pointing out that when Bill Clinton came into office, he said, no one from my staff will be able to go to work for an organization that is doing business with the government for 5 years. As he left office, he wiped that off the books and people can go out there and cash in. Speaking of ethics and reform in government, we'll be back after this.
It may be because it's only 1 inch thin, or weighs just 5.3 pounds. It may be because it has a 15.2-inch screen, or is supercomputer fast. It may be because it's made out of titanium. But, you know, whatever it is, geez, you're just gonna so want one. The incredibly thin, ultralight, mega-wide screen, titanium portable supercomputer.
Wash the world away. You're protected by Dial, the most trusted antibacterial soap of all, with a rich, creamy lather for a healthy clean you can feel. Dial Clean. Doesn't that feel better?
Sunday on NBC, all the stars in Hollywood, live and unpredictable.
I've never won anything in my life.
The Golden Globe Awards, Sunday at 8, 7 Central on NBC.
Buy this 6-piece oak finish bedroom set, only $298.
And this 5-drawer chest is free, and here's what you get.
Dresser and mirror.
Headboard, nightstand, and lamp.
And the chest is free.
Now that's Tom Peterson.
And glorious, too.
It was a world of power.
And he did have to work on it because of that great split that existed between the commander-in-chief and uniformed military people in this country.
Actually took lessons. He took lessons in it,
that's right. He's going to have an honor guard before he leaves to go off to New York. By the way, Tim, for the first time in modern memory, at least, we have a president and a vice president who have not worn the uniform of the regular military. Bill Clinton obviously was not in the military. But Al Gore has been in the military. George W. Bush was in the Air National Guard, but Dick Cheney did not serve, although he was Secretary of Defense and has a very close alliance with the military establishment. It's one more demonstration of the change in American life, because in the post-war years, so many of our most prominent political leaders, Bob Dole being the most notable example now, were people who were in uniform either in World War II or in Korea, and then a whole new generation came along who came out of Vietnam, like John McCain.
That's the key word, Tom. It is generational. George W. Bush's father was a decorated pilot. Don Rumsfeld, Secretary of Defense, decorated pilot. Colin Powell. But people, baby boomers, if you will, and now particularly because of a volunteer army, less and less is military service a prerequisite for political life.
We're joined now by an old friend of Bill Clinton's, a man who worked for him in his first campaign and then went back and helped advise in the White House, a familiar face on NBC, and that is Paul Begala. There is no end of speculation about what your friend William Jefferson Clinton will do immediately next.
Well, Jake Seward, the press secretary, had the line of the week. He said the former president, will be spending Monday waiting for the cable guy in Westchester County to show up and wire the house in Chappaqua. He's got some practical things he's got to do. He's going to write a memoir. He's got to earn some money. As he says, you know, a senator is an expensive person to support. And he'll support his wife. I offered to run the campaign for presidency of the Senate Spouses Club for him. But I don't think he's got those ambitions now.
Paul, as we watch the new administration now moving in for the luncheon in Statuary Hall with the members of Congress and former President George Bush there applauding Dick and Lynn Cheney, obviously. How much of a force can Bill Clinton be realistically in the Democratic Party? Obviously, his guy, Terry McAuliffe, is going to run the party. He's a superb fundraiser. Clinton's a young man. He still loves the game. But in this country, once you're out of power, it's hard to hang on to it in many instances.
It is, and this will be a difficult transition for him. He'll hit the wall. I mean, you saw even this morning, he was still exercising the full authority of his office. I can remember a cabinet meeting we had in 1999 when he told the cabinet on the last day, I still want to propose new ideas.
His wife, the Secretary Designate of Labor, Ms. Elaine Chao.
That may be the first time that George W. Bush has heard "Hail to the Chief" when he was the chief. He's heard it for his father, obviously, and on many other occasions, but now the band strikes it up when he enters the room. The woman to his right is Elaine Chao, who's the wife of Senator Mitch McConnell. She'll be the new Labor Secretary. She was quickly picked to replace Linda Chavez when she was forced to withdraw. Many people thought that she was a better choice.
I think the Democrats and organized labor are going to be very happy to work with Ms. Chao. I think Linda Chavez was seen as divisive by Democrats, and I think Chao will be, I think, well received by the Democratic Party.
Welcome, everyone. Please be seated and enjoy your meal. At the end of the meal, we'll have a brief program consisting of a toast and some presentations.
Paul, what are your friends on Capitol Hill on the Democratic side saying about how they're going to deal with this new president?
Well, I think they're still trying to find where the core is. Where can they deal and where is there going to be steel? Well, some things any new president is going to force onto the agenda. And I think the new president in his inaugural tried to make that very clear. Education, first and foremost, tax cuts as well. But he does have a special challenge, Bush does, because the Democrats don't believe that he carried the majority of the votes. Clearly, the popular vote, he didn't. And so I don't think he instills the same sort of fear in the hearts of Democrats that Ronald Reagan did, or the fear that maybe I think Republicans had of Bill Clinton. So he's going to have to prove himself starting out. I think he's wise to focus on education, where he'll find a good bit of common ground with the Democrats.
Let's take a moment now and watch the honor guard that has been assembled at Andrews Air Force Base, which is the president's personal airport. In effect, it's from there that he departs for foreign lands and arrives back. It's been that for some time, for presidents going all the way back to John F. Kennedy and Lyndon Johnson, Richard Nixon, obviously.
And Tom, it was in that hangar the very week that he had to testify before the grand jury that he had to go and meet the bodies of those Americans who'd been killed in terrorist bombings in our embassies. It was in that hangar with the First Lady. It was probably one of the most difficult days of his presidency. With all the other crises swirling around, that, I think, was the worst day I ever saw him have in the White House.
Bill Clinton, however, had an uncanny ability to deal with those moments well, as did Ronald Reagan. They both were such great intuitive politicians. And we elect our presidents not just to create new policy for us in education or cut our taxes, but also to lead us through those difficult moments.
And I think that's where Clinton found his footing, much as President Reagan did when the tragedy of the Challenger accident happened, when the country was in great crisis in his time, whether it was the Oklahoma City bombing or these terrorist bombings overseas at our embassies. He always seemed to know instinctively the right chord. I think Bush is also a very good instinctive politician, and that's a strength he'll bring to the office.
NBC's David Bloom is out there. He's with Terry McAuliffe, who has been a prodigious fundraiser for President Clinton and is now going to run the Democratic National Committee. David?
Tom, a prodigious fundraiser indeed. Terry McAuliffe, the incoming chairman of the Democratic National Committee. First of all, Terry, you and your wife, Dorothy, are going to be on the former Air Force One, the Boeing 747, flying up to JFK in just a few minutes here. Yep. What do you expect that flight and these next couple days that you spend with the Clintons will be like?
Well, it's going to be a unique experience for us. This will be the last time we'll be flying up on the plane. We're all excited. You know, I spoke to the president several hours ago. He's actually excited to move on the next phase of his life. He has loved the last 8 years, and we're prepared for the his next 40 years.
I was told by his former chief of staff, outgoing chief of staff, John Podesta, that he went into the Oval Office this morning, took a long look around, started to leave, went back in, took another long look, took a walk through the Rose Garden. Obviously an emotional day for him.
Very emotional. I think the last several weeks have been emotional. This week he canceled several meetings in the Oval Office so he could just spend time in there alone and really reflect on the last 8 years that he's had as President of the United States. So any president, especially this president, who has really put his heart and soul into this job.
Terry McAuliffe, thanks so much. Appreciate it.
To give a prayer here at our luncheon. If I can just have your attention one more moment. Reverend Graham.
Franklin Graham, who's the son of Billy Graham, had his own misspent youth, motorcyclist. He said he gave his mother all of her gray hairs, but he,
pray.
like George W. Bush, has found a new track in life.
Father, we thank you for your provisions, for your goodness to us. And Father, as we partake of this food, we pray that it'll nourish our bodies. And Father, we pray today, especially for our president and vice president. Lord, guide and direct them in all that they do. Be with their families and their loved ones. And Father, we pray for each member of government that you will guide and direct them. We ask your blessing upon this time together. It's in Christ's name we pray. Amen.
And now enjoy your lunch.
Another famous father-son combination, Franklin Graham and Billy Graham. Billy Graham, of course, is the man who led George W. Bush to Jesus, as he has described it, during a conversation at Walker's Point, the family compound off Maine. Bill Clinton now coming into the hangar at Andrews Air Force Base for one final review of the troops and a military farewell to the Commander-in-Chief. Remember you telling me, Paul Begala, you've worked with a lot of politicians, but you said this was the Michael Jordan of your experience in that regard.
Oh, absolutely. He never really needed coaches and handlers like me, although I was glad to be around with him when he had us on. He always seemed to know where the next step was going. He always knew where the game was going to go next, and I felt like his adversaries looked as if he was one step ahead of them at all the time, maybe more like the Harlem Globetrotters playing the New Jersey Nationals in the basketball.
As we watch this, let's bring in from New York Bob Kerrey, who has retired from the United States Senate from the state of Nebraska, is now the president of the New School there. Senator Kerrey, you had your differences with Bill Clinton over the years from time to time, but I do know that you admired his political skills. But were you surprised by the deal that was struck in the final 24 hours of his administration with an independent prosecutor? Well, we'll wait for the playing of the national anthem, and then we'll get back to this. He didn't hear me. The outgoing Commander-in-Chief getting his final military moment here at Andrews Air Force Base before he gets on a plane and flies to New York, to Chappaqua, their home in the suburbs of the city. He's already found office space in Manhattan, where he'll have his transition office and then his office as the former president, and work on his memoirs and conduct his business. Saw today that they have assets listed of about $2.9 million and legal debts of over $2 million. Mrs. Clinton got an $8 million advance on her book. The president is expected to get a very substantial figure for any memoir that he writes. And then, of course, in this world today, he can make a lot of money with lectures. Last year, Colin Powell made $6.7 million giving speeches at $75,000 and $100,000 apiece. We're joined now by Senator Bob Kerrey, a Congressional Medal of Honor recipient in Vietnam, a retiring senator from Nebraska who was a Democrat, had mixed relations with Bill Clinton at one point, calling him an unusually good liar. Senator Kerrey, were you surprised by the deal that Bill Clinton struck with the independent prosecutor in the last 24 hours of his administration?
Well, I have to say I'm pleased. I'm pleased that the special prosecutor made the decision, and the president made the decision as well to settle this, so that there's not going to be the specter of this thing continuing for the former president now that he's left office.
You're going to be sharing a state and a city with Bill and Hillary Clinton. Is there room enough in Manhattan for the Clintons and Bob Kerrey?
I think so. It feels fine right now.
What did you think of the speech of George W. Bush?
I like the speech, although it's hard to hear the words just because it's such a marvelous moment to watch the transfer of power. I was sitting here thinking that the first one that I have any memory of all of was '52 when Eisenhower became president, and I had to learn 35 years later how Truman left office, and here I'm watching the president leave office and watch him go to Andrews Air Force Base. And so, I mean, the peaceful transfer of power is so awesome that I mean, I think what the President Bush did was quite good. His speech was quite good, and the content was quite good. But it's the ceremony itself that impresses me.
And we're about to hear from Bill Clinton as part of this transfer of power, his parting remarks with Senator Hillary Clinton just behind him, and Chelsea, obviously. Few better in modern politics on the stump than this president. Sometimes went on a tad long. The country never tired of it.
Welcome to Andrews Air Force Base. On behalf of the 89th Airlift Wing, it's our honor and pleasure to have you here this afternoon. In the month of March of this year, it will be 6 years since this officer standing in front of you had the honor to be selected to serve in the White House Military Office. And it was at that time, in the month of March in 1995, that Linda and I first came to know the President and the First Family. And it was a true honor indeed, and a privilege, a unique one, to be able to serve. I will remember always being amazed at how intricate and how detailed all the support was that was provided by the military for the First Family. And when I left after the '96 campaign, Mr. President, I will always remember that, because we talked about the planes, the trains, the boats, and the buses, because you will remember President Clinton used all of those means of transportation as he campaigned across the country. And I will never forget going from Cape Girardeau, Missouri to Paducah, Kentucky on the bus run, a memorable occasion. Little did I know that in January of 1999, I would be selected to come back here to the 89th Airlift Wing to be in charge of all the airlift transportation for the President, his staff, and the White House as a whole. It's been a true honor for us to do that, and I would like to say on behalf of all the 6,000 men and women of the 89th Airlift Wing, we've taken great pride in providing you the safest, the most comfortable, and the most reliable airlift in the world. Ladies and gentlemen, it is indeed my great honor and privilege to introduce to you now our 42nd President of the United States, the Honorable William Jefferson Clinton.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Well, first let me say on behalf of Hillary and Chelsea and myself, we thank you for coming. We're glad to see you. You know how it is when you leave the White House, you wonder if you'll ever draw a crowd again. So it was nice to come in here and see so many old friends. General Hawkins, thank you, and thank you, Linda, for your service in the White House and for your service here at Andrews. I would like to thank the Honor Guard and the representatives of all the military services behind us for rendering honors to me this one last time on this important day in our country's life. When I was walking down the rows, looking at the young men and women who were standing behind me, I thought again how fortunate we are to have people of their caliber willing to sacrifice and serve the United States. And being their commander-in-chief was one of the great honors of my life. Let's give them another hand. They were great. Now, let me say to all of you, I had a very good morning, and I think we all did. We had sort of a bittersweet goodbye at the White House. We went around and said goodbye to all the staff there, took a last look at all the rooms, welcomed Vice President Mrs. Gore, and then President Mrs. Bush and Vice President Mrs. Cheney and Andy Card, the new White House Chief of Staff. We had a nice little visit, and then we went down to Capitol Hill together and conducted the inaugural ceremonies as prescribed by the Constitution of the United States. I was really grateful that the band was here today. Some of you have heard me say that one of my great fears is that I won't know where I am for 4 or 5 months because I'll walk into a big room and no one will play a song anymore. But I want all of you to know that I feel, as John Podesta did, we walked out of the Oval Office for the last time today, about 10:30. And about 10 o'clock, and he was tearing up a little bit. He just looked and said, "We did a lot of good. We did a lot of good." We did a lot of good. The whole we did a lot of good. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I gave my farewell address the other night on television, and I even did a radio address this morning. And we gave out our last chunk of money for community police so that when I left, we gave out money for 10,000 more police. And I said, you know, when I ran, I promised you 100,000 police, and this is 110,000. We gave 110% effort for 8 years. And I just want to say how grateful I am to all of you. There are people here who've held major positions in this government. People here like John Sweeney, without whom we could not have won elections or waged our battles. Thank you, sir. There are people here I've known all my life, and people here I met in the course of running for president, and people here who are here because they worked in this administration and they believed in what we were doing. But the whole nature of public service is by definition a reflection of the nature of life. It is passing, it has seasons, it is a process, not a destination. The work of this country will never be over, and no one will ever get to do it forever, and that's not all bad. We have been very fortunate that the system under which we live has given all of us a chance to live as we have, to work as we have, to serve as we have, and to see our country and the world so much better off. It was a great gift to us, and we should not be sad today. We should be grateful today and happy and full of belief and hope for our country. I don't want to start calling names, or I'm afraid I'll never stop, but I do want to thank one person in particular for coming out here today and for meaning so much to me these last 8 years. Senator Chuck Robb, thank you for being here. You are a wonderful man. Thank you. Thank you. So, now we have to go on to the next chapter in America's life and our lives and our struggle to do the things we all believe in. I will always feel good about this, and you made that possible. So you see that sign there that says, "Please don't go"? I left the White House, but I'm still here. We're not any of us going anywhere. And that's the only thing I ask of any of you. If you really believe in what we did these last 8 years, you do not have to be in a position of power in government to advance those causes. And the celebration we mark today is ordained under a Constitution in which the people are supposed to be in the driver's seat. I'm glad to go back to be one of the people. Maybe for the first time in 8 years, I'll be in the driver's seat in a way I never was. Whatever happens, I think I can speak for all of us. We are profoundly grateful. You've got a senator over here who will be a voice for you. And I am very proud of her, and I'm very, very proud of Chelsea, and I'm very grateful to them. So, we're going to New York and spend the weekend, and then Hillary will show up promptly so as not to miss any votes and to fulfill the oversight function of the United States Senate. I wish the new president well. I wish his family and administration well. I wish our country well. And always, always, out of gratitude and affection, I wish you well. You gave me the ride of my life, and I tried to give as good as I got. Thank you, and God bless you. Thank you.
Bill Clinton talking about the ride of his life, trying to give as good as he got. He said, "I've left the White House, but I'm still here." And then talked about that poignant moment when they walked out of the Oval Office and he and John Podesta, his chief of staff, said, "We did a lot of good." He is going off to New York now to begin his new life. That is a familiar tableau. Bill Clinton speaking at a podium, Hillary Clinton standing proudly and erect behind him, nodding her head in agreement. They were a formidable team. All that they went through in their personal lives, all that turmoil. They emerge at the end with her in the United States Senate, and Bill Clinton not indicted. He's going outside now to get on what used to be Air Force One for him. We're joined here by David Maraniss and Greg Craig, two people who know him well, one an author, first in his class, won the Pulitzer Prize. That's David Maraniss, and Greg Craig, who represented the president during the difficult times of impeachment. Were you surprised by the deal that was struck at the end, Greg?
Well, it was my partner who represented the president in the negotiation. I was very pleased at the result. And I think for the president, for the American people, it's a good result. There's no indictment, there's no plea bargain, there's no disbarment, there's no acknowledgement of criminal conduct. It puts an end to the matter.
We'll be back. We're going to talk some more about this with David Maraniss as well, and about the future of not just Bill Clinton, but the new president of the United States, right after this, the inauguration of George W. Bush.
And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country.
Earlier today, we asked you what year John Kennedy challenged a new generation of Americans. Here's how you voted on our website. The correct answer, the inaugural of 1961.
Companies are struggling to change, struggling with the complexities of e-business, with making intranets, extranets, and the internet work together across any platform around the world. Well, now it can all work together as one net.
This is my final plea. I am a gecko. Not to be confused with Geico, which could save you hundreds on car insurance. So stop calling me.
Geico. A 15-minute call could save you 15% or more on car insurance.
So you want to change your name? People confusing you with Geico, calling you at all hours? What name would you like?
Komodo Dragon, please.
Geico. A 15-minute call could save you 15% or more on car insurance.
Monday, what if a dark angel
No pulse.
was coming after your partners?
You're way out of your league here, pal.
All new mysterious ways, NBC Monday.
The critical need for more high-tech workers is opening a world of great career opportunities. The Institute for Information Technology not only teaches and prepares you, but can even place you in today's hot new businesses.
If you're at a career dead end, or maybe you just graduated but don't know where you're going, then the Institute for Information Technology may be for you.
It's the only program of its kind, specifically designed for individuals with little or no computer experience. The Institute for Information Technology produces some of the highest pass rate certifications in the industry. Our graduates are sought after by the world's most prestigious companies, offering premium salaries. According to recent salary surveys, the average IT graduate makes approximately 70% more than the typical white-collar worker. And with some companies, salaries have increased up to 21% per year.
So don't wait. Call this number now to schedule your appointment. Classes are limited and filling fast.
Let the Institute for Information Technology prepare you for that exciting career you've been dreaming about.
Former President Bill Clinton, who always did have a hard time departing, he's trying to leave Andrews Air Force Base, always at his own speed. David Maraniss, you wrote Pulitzer Prize-winning biography of Bill Clinton. He obviously would like to stay at power in the Democratic Party, but do you think that that's going to be possible?
Well, I think it's possible, but it will be somewhat difficult. I think that the moment there's a new president, the old president fades very quickly. But there is somewhat of a vacuum right now, and Clinton likes to fill vacuums. It's funny watching him leave here. He's leaving on Clinton time. And that's the way he'll be with politics, too.
Exactly. What about you, Greg? You were his lawyer and you're his confidant as well. Do you think that he will be able to stay in the spotlight, so to speak, and become a power in the Democratic Party?
Well, I think inevitably he's going to be involved and interested. That's the nature of the guy's chemistry and his personality. But inevitably it's going to flow to the people who actually speak for the Democratic Party at the moment, which I think is Tom Daschle and Dick Gebhardt. That is the challenge that those two leaders have got, which is to fill that vacuum that David was talking about, fill it with leadership and fill it with content.
And in his acknowledgement to the independent prosecutor of his wrongdoing, hasn't he also diminished his political effectiveness, especially in a time when you have a new president saying we're going to restore dignity and respect to the Oval Office?
Well, it's hard for me to comment on his political effectiveness, but I doubt that that's in any way diminished his political effectiveness. I think it's taken whatever baggage was left and removed it, rather than diminish his political effectiveness.
What about you, David?
I agree with Greg on that. I think that if it had dragged on for another year or two, that would have diminished him. He would have been fighting in that other realm. I think now he can sort of work behind Hillary as part of that voice without the distraction of how he deals with his own legal problems.
It's always very hard to know how future historians will judge any president in contemporaneous times, but he said we did a lot of good. That was the mantra that he would like us to remember on this day. Do you think that historians will be kind to him?
I think they'll be somewhat kinder than his enemies of today, but I think that he's leaving as he came in, an incredible mixed bag.
Will we ever know Bill Clinton completely, Greg?
I think the country has gotten to know him pretty well, as a matter of fact, from A through Z. On the question of the history, I think the foreign policy achievements will live. I think he's had an extraordinary run in foreign policy and international affairs, where he's combined pragmatism with idealism and values, and he's exploited the leadership position of the United States in ways that are really quite impressive.
Gentlemen, thank you very much for being with us. We'll all be watching Bill Clinton, I have a feeling, for the rest of our lives. I don't think he's someone who's going to become part of the wallpaper, as a matter of fact. Let's go to John Podesta, who's there. I'm sorry, we're going to go to a commercial, but we'll be right back.
Let's play Truth or Dare. Truth. When you get a yeast infection, you use one of those messy creams, don't you? Truth. There may be an easier way. It's a pill, Diflucan. Truth. A pill that's as effective as the leading 7-day creams without the mess. Ready for the dare? I dare you to call your doctor to find out more about Diflucan. Sure, it takes a little effort, but tell the truth. A pill that treats a yeast infection is worth it, isn't it? Oral Diflucan, the #1 doctor-prescribed treatment for yeast infections. Kiss those creams goodbye. With Diflucan, there is an increased possibility of side effects compared with creams, including headache, nausea, and abdominal pain. In rare instances, serious effects in the liver and serious allergic reactions were reported. Do not use Diflucan if you are nursing. If you are pregnant or taking other medications, talk to your doctor. To prevent heart-related complications, do not take Diflucan if you are taking Propulsid. For more information, ask your doctor or call us. Oral Diflucan.
Sunday, a new era begins. The inauguration of George W. Bush, plus John McCain and the man who cut the deal with Bill Clinton. If it's Sunday, it's Meet the Press.
Only at Tom Peterson.
And Glorious too.
Your choice of 4 stylish living room groups, only $4.98.
Every sofa, sleeper, recliner shown
is quality built in Oregon.
Choose this sofa and 2 recliners.
Or this 3-piece sectional.
Or this full sleeper with recliner.
Or our famous 7-piece living room group.
Your choice, just $20 a month.
Now that's Tom Peterson.
And Glorious too.
It was a long way from the haberdashery in Kansas City to the east portico of the Capitol, but Harry S. Truman defied the pollsters and took the oath of office.
What we have achieved in liberty, we will surpass in greater liberty. Steadfast in our faith in the Almighty, we will advance toward a world where man's freedom is secure.
What year was it? 1945, 1949, or 1953? Vote now at our website, msnbc.com. We'll give you the correct answer later today.
I'm not going to give you the answer, but in fact, it was the first televised inaugural. Harry S. Truman, obviously in black and white, the senator from the state of Missouri who became vice president and then president of the United States. Ken Duberstein is with NBC's Andrea Mitchell. He was White House chief of staff during the administration of Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan will turn 90 years of age on February 6th. Let's go to Andrea now.
And we know that's a very important birthday. I'm here with the Duberstein family, in fact. Ken, you've talked to the Reagans. I know you've been in touch with the family. Ronald Reagan, 90 years old on February 6th. You got on that chopper with him and flew out to Andrews. What was that experience like when you circled the White House?
Well, you know, as we circled the White House, the president looked down. President Reagan looked down and turned to Nancy and said, "Look, dear, there's our little bungalow." And if there was ever a moment of tears, that was the moment, because it's a melancholy time as you leave the White House.
And he's not doing well now. I mean, we know that he hasn't been mobile even before this happened. Not great news coming out of California.
Well, it's not great news, but hopefully, you know, we're going to keep winning one more for the Gipper as we go to the 90th birthday.
You were a McCain supporter. Next week, John McCain meets with George Bush. Do you think John McCain should back off on campaign finance reform now and let George Bush have his first 100 days without having this controversy?
Well, I think George W. Bush and John McCain are going to work out, hopefully, a date certain where there will be a vote on campaign finance, but probably not in those first 100 days.
And so McCain is going to give into that?
Well, hopefully that they're going to reach an accommodation so that they have a date certain, so we'll finally get campaign finance reform up in the Senate.
Okay, thanks very much.
Thank
Ken
you.
Duberstein, all the guys here. Back to you, Tom.
All the Duberstein kids getting in, as they deserve to. NBC's Andrea Mitchell with Ken Duberstein, who is one of the rock-solid professionals in this city. We're going to go to Al Roker now. George W. Bush is promising a new political climate in this city. But what about the real climate? Is the sun going to shine before the end of the day, or more pertinently, are we going to have snow for the parade, Al?
Well, Tom, it looks like snow will get here, but it won't be till after the parade. As you can see in the stands, umbrellas now sprouting very quickly. The rain is coming down. It's 36 degrees. We got a wind chill of about 20. I think the rain will get a little more steady. Then we look for some sleet to mix in during the parade, about 2, 3 o'clock, and by 6 o'clock tonight, we're looking for 2 to 4 inches of snow. However, on the other hand, as far as Washington inaugurals go, they're no stranger to bad weather.
I, Ronald Reagan, do solemnly swear.
I, Ronald Reagan, do solemnly swear.
The second swearing-in ceremony for President Ronald Reagan forced inside the Capitol Rotunda due to the weather outside. 1985 went down in the record books as the coldest January inauguration ever. The temperature at 12 noon, a mere 7 degrees, with wind chills as cold as 30 below. It was cold and raw for 9th President William Henry Harrison's inauguration also, but they stayed outside all during his 1 hour and 40-minute speech on March 4th, 1841. Later that night, Harrison got a chill, which turned into a cold and then pneumonia. He died 1 month later. 10 inches of snow descended on the nation's capital just before William Taft was to be sworn in on March 4th, 1909. Another indoor ceremony. President Franklin Delano Roosevelt's second inauguration was the first held on January 20th. This day in 1937 still holds the record for being the wettest ever, with nearly 2 inches of rain to drench our nation's capital.
So far, we've only picked up about 1/4 of an inch, Tom, and on the streets, they've put salt in front of Pennsylvania Avenue. Right now, buses are coming up, pulling off, and letting off a lot of VIPs who will be filling up these stands. Of course, given the weather, some of them might want to stay in the bus as long as possible.
All right, thanks very much, NBC's Al Roker, who will be on duty during the parade, and we do hope that it doesn't rain on George W. Bush's parade, and we do expect that he'll spend at least part of that parade walking down Pennsylvania Avenue. We'll be back with more of the inaugural of George W. Bush, the year 2001, right after this.
Looking for a great value on a great car? It's time to check out Oldsmobile, because right now, you can drive with the confidence of a 5-year, 60,000-mile General Motors protection plan. An offer that's good on every new 2001 Oldsmobile. Plus, qualified buyers can finance a new 2001 Oldsmobile with 0 down plus 0 interest and payments until 2002, which makes Oldsmobile the smart buyer's choice. It's one of our best offers yet.
I'm ready.
See your local dealer today.
It may be because it's only 1 inch thin or weighs just 5.3 pounds. It may be because it has a 15.2-inch screen or is supercomputer fast. It may be because it's made out of titanium. But, you know, whatever it is, geez, you're just going to so want one. The incredibly thin, ultralight, mega-wide screen, titanium portable supercomputer.
Wednesday.
A missile shield that's supposed to save humanity.
What if we build and test it?
Negative intercept.
What goes up must come down. All new West Wing, NBC Wednesday.
Time's up. Final days, final markdown. American Home Furniture is closing our Delta Park store. Save up to 75%. Everything wall to wall has been drastically marked down for immediate liquidation. Save up to 75%. American Home Furniture store closing sale. Delta Park and Tualatin.
An energy-efficient home. It's as simple as using compact fluorescent bulbs or choosing energy-saving appliances that can also earn you a state tax credit. It means sealing drafty windows and other air leaks, getting a tune-up for your heat pump or furnace, and fully insulating your home. An energy-efficient home. It means lower energy costs today and a better planet for the future. For a free home energy audit, call the utility that provides your heat or this number.
Time's up. Final days, final markdown. American Home Furniture is closing our Delta Park store. Save up to 75%. Everything wall to wall has been drastically marked down for immediate liquidation. Save up to 75%. American Home Furniture store closing sale. Delta Park and Tualatin.
We're back in the nation's capital. The lunch continues in Statuary Hall. They're in the rotunda of the Capitol. Congressional leaders. The new president of the United States, George W. Bush, his wife Laura. The new vice president of the United States, Richard Cheney, or as they call it back in Wyoming, Cheney, and his wife Lynn. We're awaiting the beginning of the parade, obviously. Weather is inclement, but so far it's holding just on the margins. Bill Clinton couldn't take a helicopter out to Andrews Air Force Base, but he is going to be able to lift off from there and fly to New York. We're going to show you now what's been going on in a confined area of the nation's capital. Some 2,000 protesters have been held back by a combination of district police and other federal law enforcement officials. They have given them an area in which they can protest. They're protesting against a variety of issues and against George W. Bush generally. They don't want them to spill out of this area. There was an enormous amount of security. This is a cameraman who's getting shoved around for unexplained reasons. I guess he didn't move fast enough. People getting roughed up in the nation's capital. The police chief here did say that he would not allow that to get out of hand. We don't expect that it will spill over into Pennsylvania Avenue and the parade itself. So that's a first test, obviously, of George W. Bush and his call for civility, Tim, and for a new spirit of harmony here in the nation's capital.
We've got to be careful of those kinds of things, but clearly the D.C. police realize that it could get out of control, and they don't want to jeopardize anyone's security or safety.
Everybody's mindful of what happened in Seattle, obviously,
exactly right.
when they did lose control. And there were a lot of world leaders there, and they were in a perilous state for a time. Now we have the leaders of this country and a lot of visiting dignitaries as well.
One of the first decisions George W. Bush has to make, Tom, is whether to reopen Pennsylvania Avenue in front of the White House, which was closed down by President Clinton. Be interesting to see what he does.
A big applause line when he talked about the tax cut today.
This audience loves tax cuts. And George W. Bush, during the entire campaign, never flinched.
Positive things can happen for the country. There are men and women of good conscience and good heart who are serving this noble nation for the right reasons. Let's let it happen.
God bless, and God bless America.
George W. Bush, his second short speech of the day, again repeating the theme that things can get done, that public service is a noble calling, and that expectations may be low, but they will surprise people. This is the mantra that he has been repeating in the days leading up to his arrival here in the nation's capital, and it is expected to be, certainly in the first 3 weeks of his presidency, the operating theme morning, noon, and night. Let's get something done. Let's get the country moving. Let's show that there is bipartisan spirit in this land. We're watching all of this with Bill Nataglio, who wrote a biography of George W. Bush called First Son. It's the story of the Bush dynasty. He joins us now as we look in on all of this. What is it about George W. Bush that the country doesn't know that it probably should know?
He's an extremely competitive man. I think we are beginning to learn that in the post-election process. He stayed into the bitter end to fight. I think you're also going to learn that he's a quick decision maker. We have talked a lot about him being a delegator. But he's also pretty quick on the trigger. He can pull some decisions real quickly, and I think we'll see that. He's not a guy that wants to linger and chew things over. We'll learn very quickly that he presses the button when he needs to.
All right, we're going to ask you to stay right there because we're going to continue our coverage here from Washington, D.C., the inauguration of George W. Bush, right after this. Sounds like we've lost her microphone, obviously. Technical difficulties down there. She's in the middle of the crowd. They're exceptionally heavy security during the... Yes, now we can hear you.
Okay, Tom, we're back. Some technical difficulties, but we're about halfway between the Capitol and the White House at the Navy Memorial. This has become one of the staging areas for the protesters, and it's a little chaotic, not very organized right now. There are a variety of protest groups here, including the National Organization for Women. Just a few moments ago, some of the protesters crawled up one of the flagpoles here at the Navy Memorial and tried to take down the flags and put up a black flag. They are covering the gamut of issues, protesting the vote count in Florida, Bush's position on the death penalty, and of course, a lot of signs denouncing his choice for Attorney General, former Senator John Ashcroft. A lot of abortion rights people here protesting. There has been one arrest that we observed about an hour ago when one of the protesters tried to cross over the barrier onto Pennsylvania Avenue. Quickly, the police brought in reinforcements to line Pennsylvania Avenue. They're giving the protesters a lot of free rein right now because the parade hasn't yet started, but making it very clear no one is going to cross the line onto Pennsylvania Avenue. Tom?
All right, thank you very much, Campbell Brown. Let's go to Fred Francis, who's also at a protest. Fred?
Yes, Tom, earlier today, about the time President Bush was taking the oath of office, a real street battle about 6 blocks north of the parade route. The D.C. police made their first stand. It was a big stand. They had to fight off about 1,000 protesters who were heading for the parade grounds. The D.C. police told NBC News, we have to stop them here. We can't let them get anywhere near the parade ground because we do not have, in spite of 7,000 police, enough people down near the parade route to stop them. So they made a decision that they would stop them at 14th Street and about 6 blocks north. About 15 to 20 people were arrested. Billy clubs came out, a few heads were cracked, but reinforcements came in. But it was a very close thing. The head of the D.C. police told NBC News that he came very close to calling out the National Guard to keep them from getting anywhere near the parade route. After that, in the last two and a half hours, the protesters have broken up into several different areas. You can hear the helicopters going overhead now. There is no group of protesters larger than 200 or 300. In fact, they were predicting 10,000 coming to Washington. They had about 2,000. They are broken up. It is a sporadic protest, and the D.C. police have actually stopped them. Flying squads of police going to and fro the city. They actually, their tactic was anytime they saw them getting anywhere within 4 blocks of the parade route, anywhere where there would be 4 blocks of dignitaries, they would move in these flying squads of police and stop them. So far it's been successful. I don't think that they will ever be able to get past the parade route, which is behind me here, about a block. They're within 2 to 3 blocks of the parade route. There are about 400 policemen in cars waiting to move. And that's the tactic they're using, and Tom, it seems to be working.
All right, thanks, Fred Francis. We're going to go back to Campbell Brown now because there is more action at the Navy Memorial, which is very close to the parade route, and the police are beginning to show up in greater numbers. Campbell?
They are indeed, Tom. There have been a few scuffles, and we're trying to make our way a little bit closer to where it's happening. There have been a number of protesters who were burning an American flag a few moments ago, and as I said before, some got into a scuffle with police as they tried to remove some of the flags at the Navy Memorial and replace them with black anarchist flags. Again, the police are trying to give people here a fair amount of free rein. There is a small group. I think there are some organized protesters, as I said before, the National Organization for Women. But again, most are peaceful, but there is a small group that has been going at it with police a little bit. And from what I can see, my vantage point right now, it looks like one group is trying to break across the barricade, and they're now throwing things across the barricade. It's going to be interesting to see to what extent the police get involved when the parade actually begins here, Tom.
That will be the critical moment, obviously, as the motorcade carrying the president and the first lady and the other dignitaries, including former presidents and the vice president, go by that particular place, which is so close to Pennsylvania Avenue. NBC's Ann Curry is at Freedom Plaza, which is about halfway between where both these protests were occurring. Ann?
That's right. In fact, I'm looking down Pennsylvania Avenue, and I can see Campbell Brown's position. And there was some smoke rising from there earlier, and we can see the police officers all lined up in there. And if you can take a look right behind me as I walk around in this circle, Dwayne, follow me around. You can see the police officers are standing shoulder to shoulder. And over in this direction, as you can see, you can hear the boos rising from the crowd. There is a very loud and vocal group of protesters in this area. More than 2,000 in that area have been lined up. And earlier today, Tom, the police officers pushed some of the protesters up into the grandstand to get them a little further away from the parade route. But they have positions, many of them with signs. And we should also mention, supporters who are gathered and been filling the stands in the last hour. So it sounds like at this point here at Freedom Plaza, there is going to be a lot of noise when this parade travels past. Tom?
Thank you very much, NBC's Ann Curry. We'll be back with continuing coverage of the inauguration of George W. Bush, the year 2001, right after this.
Now, Froggy. Now, lizard. Sailboats.
Wash the world away. You're protected by Dial, the most trusted antibacterial soap of all, with a rich, creamy lather for a healthy clean you can feel. Dial Clean. Doesn't that feel better?
Thousands of drivers are saving money by switching to Geico Auto Insurance. I'm here with one of them.
Hello.
You don't want your identity revealed. Why?
If word got out I saved so much, people would be hitting me up for money all the time.
Ah.
You through with the milk?
Sure, of course.
I have to be careful.
Geico Direct. A 15-minute call could save you 15% or more on car insurance.
Monday, what if a dark angel
No pulse.
was coming after your partners?
You're way out of your league here, pal.
All new mysterious ways, NBC Monday.
The critical need for more high-tech workers is opening a world of great career opportunities. The Institute for Information Technology not only teaches and prepares you, but can even place you in today's hot new businesses.
If you're at a career dead end, or maybe you just graduated but don't know where you're going, then the Institute for Information Technology may be for you.
It's the only program of its kind, specifically designed for individuals with little or no computer experience. The Institute for Information Technology produces some of the highest pass rate certifications in the industry. Our graduates are sought after by the world's most prestigious companies, offering premium salaries. According to recent salary surveys, the average IT graduate makes approximately 70% more than the typical white-collar worker. And with some companies, salaries have increased up to 21% per year.
So don't wait. Call this number now to schedule your appointment. Classes are limited and filling fast.
Let the Institute for Information Technology prepare you for that exciting career you've been dreaming about.
Bill Clinton and Mrs. Clinton finally getting into the reconfigured Air Force One. It's Special Air Mission One now. It's the 747 that will take them to New York. All former presidents and defense secretaries, for that matter, say when you ask them what they miss most, they say, I had my own Air Force. The president has a very comfortable office on board and his own bedroom there, but that now is not part of the post-election package, although there are considerable perks. They get Secret Service protection, they get cars, and a pretty healthy budget to run their office. So one president leaving town, the other one coming down the steps to the Capitol, preparing to go to his new address, 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, where he'll review the parade and then spend the night after going to a number of inaugural balls. This part of American politics really hasn't changed all that much, Doris, over the years.
No, that's right. The parade has been a long time in coming, and it's really an important part of the pageantry, I think. I mean, we don't have a king, but we do have a president, and there should be that ritual in the parade. I think my favorite parade story is that John Kennedy, when he was watching his own parade, noticed that the Coast Guard contingent had no blacks in it. So he then contacted a young aide, actually my husband, Richard Goodwin, and said, do something about that. And Goodwin said, my God, it's the first time I realized it wasn't just words. We could actually do something. The next day, the order went out to integrate the Coast Guard. He noticed, even as he's watching. Right. Here it starts.
One of the bands in the parade will be from Crawford, Texas. Crawford, Texas is a wonderful but very tiny town out there northwest of Waco. They didn't have enough money to fly here, so they all drove here. It's a town that expects to have a little more prosperity now that George W. Bush has his ranch not too far away, and there are lots of signs on vacant lots saying, media, lease this space, as you drive through Crawford, Texas.
You know, Bob Kerrey mentioned it earlier, Tom, just the magic of this transformation of power. We take it for granted, but you don't realize how special it is. And when Bill Clinton was standing at the podium at the airport hangar without the presidential seal, it was so striking to me. He looked different to me. He sounded different to me. He was no longer the president. And in discussions with Robert Ray, the independent counsel, he was insistent that Bill Clinton enter into this legal agreement while he was still president. And I didn't quite understand it until you see today's events. Right. He wanted this official sanction, if you will, of a president of the United States still being held accountable. Right. And it would have been different if he had waited until next week as a former president.
True indeed.
Striking.
True indeed.
Absolutely.
The luncheon at the Statuary Hall had a kind of a unique twist. They served food from 3 different centuries, 1801, 1901, and 2001. They had a lobster pie, they had a filet of beef, and they had, let's see, some vegetables from 2001, 2 wines, both from California, one a Cabernet and the other one a Chardonnay. 2,000 calories in the meal, Tim.
It sounds like one of Doris's lunches.
Right. 100 kilograms of fat. George W. Bush is a patient, client, if you will, of Kenneth Cooper, who is the man who invented aerobics in America and is a big advocate of a low-fat, lean diet, lots of exercise and aerobics. George Bush told me that he hopes to exercise or work out an hour a day, and I suspect he won't be able to maintain that kind of a habit.
You know, at Franklin Roosevelt's 4th inaugural, that morning he read in the newspaper that his own housekeeper, who ran the White House Food Service, had rejected his own menu. She had this Germanic control over the White House. He had wanted chicken a la king. She decided she couldn't keep it hot for so many people, so it was chicken salad instead. At the end of the day, they made a joke, could you even find the chicken in the chicken salad? Because she was so frugal. So he kept saying, I wanted to be president for 4th term so I could fire her, but he never got around to doing it.
One of the changes is that this president doesn't drink. They will serve liquor in the White House. His father, it's well known, liked to take a martini at the end of the day, as did FDR
Lyndon Johnson and
Lyndon
FDR,
Johnson.
absolutely. In fact, for FDR, that was his favorite moment, the cocktail hour, when he'd gather friends around, they'd tell stories. He wouldn't let anybody talk about the war. They could talk about movies, books they'd read, and relax with a drink so that he could replenish his energies for the day ahead. He'll have to find means to relax and replenish energies. They all have to do it somehow.
I'll bet that's a military coin the general is giving the new president, the commander-in-chief. That's become an exchange that military people have, a coin that they hand out representing their branch of the service and their particular unit. You can get a pretty good collection, but it's a treasure to have. The House Sergeant of Arms now moving him along, getting him into the motorcade so that he can start back down Pennsylvania Avenue.
And now he sits in the right-hand seat of the car, the seat that he gave Bill Clinton on the ride up to the Capitol. That's where the senior man sits in protocol, Tom, and it's now George W. Bush's for as long as he's president.
That's the new presidential limousine. We'll be back with coverage of the parade, which is just about to begin right after this.
That the only thing we have to fear is fear itself.
Earlier, we asked you what year Franklin Roosevelt uttered those words. Here's how you voted on our website. The correct answer, at his first inaugural in 1933.
It may be because it's only 1 inch thin, or weighs just 5.3 pounds. It may be because it has a 15.2-inch screen, or is supercomputer fast. It may be because it's made out of titanium. But, you know, whatever it is, geez, you're just gonna so want one. The incredibly thin, ultralight, mega-wide screen, titanium portable supercomputer.
We are healthy, strong, energetic, even sexy. We drink Ensure when we can't eat nutritious foods like these. Ensure has vitamins and minerals like in vegetables, calcium like in milk, and protein like in fish. From Ensure High Calcium to Ensure High Protein to Ensure Plus, it's a source of complete balanced nutrition, so we can get the most out of life. Ensure, drink to your health. And now Ensure is richer, creamier, and tastes better than ever in delicious new tastes.
Ripped from the headlines, the Central Park celebration that turned ugly, and it was all caught on tape.
You want to try another story?
All new Law & Order, NBC Wednesday.
The critical need for more high-tech workers is opening a world of great career opportunities. The Institute for Information Technology not only teaches and prepares you, but can even place you in today's hot new businesses.
If you're at a career dead end, or maybe you just graduated but don't know where you're going, then the Institute for Information Technology may be for you.
It's the only program of its kind, specifically designed for individuals with little or no computer experience. The Institute for Information Technology produces some of the highest pass rate certifications in the industry. Our graduates are sought after by the world's most prestigious companies, offering premium salaries. According to recent salary surveys, the average IT graduate makes approximately 70% more than the typical white-collar worker. And with some companies, salaries have increased up to 21% per year.
So don't wait. Call this number now to schedule your appointment. Classes are limited and filling fast.
Let the Institute for Information Technology prepare you for that exciting career you've been dreaming about.
Cleared for takeoff. Special Air Mission 1 carrying former President Bill Clinton and new Senator Hillary Clinton to New York with their daughter Chelsea and a couple of friends. They'll go up and spend the weekend in Chappaqua, their new home in Westchester, which is just north of the city in the suburbs there. Some question about whether they'll stay in Chappaqua or whether they'll sell that and move to the city. And there, the new president and Mrs. Bush preparing to leave Capitol Hill to make that historic route down Pennsylvania Avenue to their new address at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. Laura Bush in the back of the car, who has been a very important force in his life, his wife and soulmate and confidant since he met her in Midland at a barbecue and married her 3 months later. It's always perilous for anyone to go out on a limb on these occasions, but my guess is that Laura Bush is going to emerge in this administration as a real star. That she's very centered, has a great sense of self-confidence, and she has some objectives in terms of education and reading and literacy, and I think the country will take to her. Let's go to John Siegenthaler now down on the parade route. John?
Well, look, we've been talking a bit about security today, Tom, and this, of course, is a national security special event as designated by law, which means that the Secret Service, of course, is in charge of all security measures. It is the largest law enforcement presence at an inauguration in the history of the United States. Now, as President and Mrs. Bush head down Pennsylvania Avenue, we should tell you there are 3 times as many police along the route as there are as usual. At the same time, they've removed metal trash cans from the street. They've also got security checkpoints along the parade route, and they search spectators as they go in and out. So there's high security and concern here as we watch these protesters that Campbell talked about a little while ago get a little closer to the parade route. Tom?
Thank you, John. This probably raises the possibility that George and Laura Bush may not be able to get and walk along the parade route if there are protesters everywhere there, because even with the human shields that have been erected and all the other security considerations, you can't absolutely protect a first couple when they're exposed in open air. John Kennedy, obviously, was the last president to ride in an open-air car. We know the tragic consequences of that. At the other end of Pennsylvania Avenue, with a check on the weather, is Al Roker. Who else? Al?
Thanks a lot, Tom. As you can see, we showed you earlier, this area of the stands, there have been a whole lot of umbrellas up, but as you can see, the rain has kind of slowed down a little bit. We've got just the barest hint of some drizzle, and as people are filing in now to the presidential box, I don't know if it's any kind of a barometer, Tom, but I'll tell you, the biggest cheer yet went up when they introduced presidential nephew, George P. Bush. Obviously, a crowd favorite already. But the good news is the rain has kind of let up a bit. 36 degrees right now. The winds have died down. So Mother Nature is cooperating for the new president, George Bush, and his First Lady, Ms. Laura Bush.
Thanks, Al Roker. We'll have continuing coverage of the parade and the inauguration and the protest. Right after this, a timeline with Ronald Reagan.
From movie actor to governor of California, Ronald Reagan now commanded his biggest stage. In this inaugural address, he vowed to pull America out of its recession.
We must act today in order to preserve tomorrow. And let there be no misunderstanding. We are going to begin to act, beginning today.
What year was it? 1977, 1981, or 1985? Vote now on our website, msnbc.com. We'll have the answer later today.
They will not go away in days.
You know how hard it is to quit smoking. You know how tough that first day without a cigarette can be. It's time to ask your doctor about Zyban. With Zyban, you don't have to quit all at once. Zyban doesn't work for everyone. It's part of a comprehensive plan from your doctor to help you stop smoking. And it's the prescription smoking cessation aid most recommended by doctors. Zyban is different from nicotine replacements. It is nicotine-free, so you don't have to quit immediately. After Zyban reaches the right level in your system, it reduces your cravings. You feel like smoking less and less until you're ready to stop completely. You should know that there is a risk of seizure with Zyban. To reduce that risk, don't use if you have or have had a seizure or eating disorder. Don't use if you take Wellbutrin or an MAOI. When used with a nicotine patch or alone, there is a risk of elevated blood pressure, in some cases severe. To reduce risk of serious side effects, tell your doctor if you have liver or kidney problems. Side effects may include dry mouth and difficulty sleeping. Ask your doctor if Zyban is right for you. Zyban, you don't have to quit all at once.
Monday.
Mom? Where is he?
When does vengeance become more important than the badge?
You touch my mother again, I'll kill you.
All new Third Watch, NBC Monday.
Bruce Chevrolet, known for reliable sales, service, and the best value for over 20 years. Count on Bruce for all your driving needs. Take your choice, only $48.87. Extra clean 84 Chevy 1500 pickup, low miles and automatic. Or this loaded 91 Buick Skylark sedan that drives like a dream. Or this very sharp 93 Chevy Lumina.
The best cars at the best prices.
That's Bruce Chevrolet in the heart of Hillsboro or on the web at brucechevrolet.com.
I call it the
The St. Vincent de Paul Food Bank Victory Over Hunger Garden. All the food that I grow here goes to the St. Vincent de Paul Food Bank. I like to garden. This is my workout also. And at the same time, it's helping people. If you could do something that you like to do, and if you can then do it for somebody else, you got it made.
Just moments ago, a special mission, Air Special Mission number 1, that's the 747 that will be Air Force One once it returns to Washington and then becomes the plane of President George W. Bush. It is carrying Bill and Hillary Clinton back to New York. Gives you an idea of what the weather is like over the Washington, D.C. area. And this gives you an idea of what the security is like on the parade route, which is now underway from the Capitol all the way down to the White House with George and Laura Bush, and then an assortment of military and community bands and floats following. There are protesters along the way, but as you can see, there is virtually a human shield all along the parade route. This is part of the reality of American life. Security is such an enormous consideration now. Tim and I have been talking about these presidential motorcades, even vice presidential motorcades, running 20, 24 cars at a time, not just in Washington, D.C., but wherever they go. Federal authorities insist it's all necessary given the level of threat that we don't know about, but they say they know about. That certainly, Doris, has been a huge change in American life.
Oh, absolutely. When you think about the fact that you used to be able to walk into the White House, actually, you could go in and wait inside for an appointment with the president. You could wander around the lawns. You could picnic on the lawns. I mean, we take for granted sometimes all of this change in our lives with locked cars and locked bicycles and obviously locked presidents. But it's a very sad loss in many ways for our country as a whole.
And it's true, Tim, not just for the president, but it's also true, as Mrs. Bush is about to find out, wherever she goes.
Absolutely. Hillary Clinton constantly tried to sneak out of the White House just to take a walk with her daughter and put a baseball cap on and sunglasses, but the Secret Service was always there because they're charged with the responsibility of protecting her. And God forbid something happened, they would be on the line. But it has now reached the sense, Tom, where even members of the United States Senate are questioning, do we really need this much? And what if you just put somebody in a van and had one support car with it? People wouldn't know who they were or where they're going, and it might be a lot safer than these 20-car motorcades would stop traffic and create a certain excitement about them, which might, in fact, try to influence people to do something untoward. I think it has to be examined very, very seriously.
I do, absolutely. And I've talked to both President Clinton and Vice President Gore about it. They say they're powerless. It's up to the Secret Service. Back to Mrs. Bush for just a moment. Everybody will be watching her very carefully. She's not as well known as her husband, but she's about to be. NBC's Andrea Mitchell has been reporting on some of that for us as well. Andrea?
Thank you, Tom. I'm here with Martha Brandt, who is Newsweek's White House correspondent, having covered the Bushes for this entire year. And Martha, you have a piece coming out on Monday, I guess, on Laura Bush. Right. Laura Bush is such a different kind of first lady. We've already seen today the military announcer, when Hillary Clinton came down those steps, said, First Lady, Senator Hillary Clinton. That's not going to be Laura Bush.
Definitely not. She's painted herself as the anti-Hillary to some extent. And in fact, she's moving out of some prized real estate in the White House. She is not going to take the West Wing office, and the OEOB, the Old Executive Office Building space, is no longer going to be part of her domain, just a traditional East Wing office.
She caused a little bit of a stir with Katie Couric on the Today program this week when she said, in answer to a question, that she did not think Roe versus Wade should be overturned. And there was a great deal of discomfort in the Bush camp about the fact that she was speaking so explicitly about a controversial subject.
Right. She's never discussed it, despite the fact that reporters have pushed her again and again on the topic until now. Her aides insist that she was pressed. They feel like she was somewhat pushed into saying it, but indeed she did say it, and the timing's interesting given her husband's situation with the Ashcroft nomination.
Well, the transcript shows that she simply responded to the question, but one wonders, will she have the effect if people begin to believe that she's a bit more liberal on some of these issues than her husband, of helping him with women. There's a big gender gap, double digit, and there are a lot of Republican women across this country, as well as many Democratic women, who are concerned about the abortion question and other related issues.
Right. One of her friends said that she felt that Laura Bush had said it to reassure women. Whether she did or not, I don't know. But certainly she was able in Texas to extend an olive branch to all sorts of groups that weren't necessarily his constituency, women included, artists, writers. So I think she'll probably do the same thing here in Washington.
Now, whenever we talk about first ladies, we have to talk about the trivial, the appearance factor. Right. And any thoughts about, you're going to the ball to cover them tonight, the dress, all the excitement about that. How is she going to adjust to that and to some criticism about style and fashion?
She's always been a reluctant public figure, and a couple of weeks ago when she came in that purple plaid outfit, she got some criticism. And her attitude was somewhat bemused or even amused, where she said, I can't believe they're writing about this. And she even said to a friend, can you believe they're writing about my shoes? So she's pretty centered. I don't think she'll change her style that much, but every First Lady gets fine-tuned, so to speak, in the course of 4 years.
One of the things that struck me also in an interview with Tom Brokaw earlier this week, or last weekend, she said that she had voted for Eugene McCarthy. This is not someone raised in Midland, Texas, but she was not raised as a strong Republican. She said to Tom that she was a Republican by marriage.
Absolutely. In fact, she was a Democrat, although most Texans were until fairly recently.
But being a Democrat in Texas is being a yellow dog Democrat. It's not exactly being a liberal Democrat.
That's exactly right. But I think that there are suspicions, and her comment the other day to Katie Couric, that she isn't quite as conservative as her husband, and as we saw with her mother-in-law.
Exactly. Thank you so much, Martha Brandt. Back to you, Tom.
Thank you very much, NBC's Andrea Mitchell. We should tell you as well, the president has already instructed his staff to take some actions. He's told Andrew Card to make sure that a number of actions that President Bill Clinton had in his final hours in office, that they not be printed, those regulations, hoping to stop them, most of them having to do with setting aside lands in the West under the Monuments Act, and also dealing with the National Forest and the construction of roads into them. So that'll be a fight that will go on both in the courts and in Congress in the coming weeks as the presidential motorcade makes its way toward the reviewing stand, where the senior President Bush and Mrs. Bush are already in place. We'll tell you we'll be back after this.